player. Well, Messi hasn't an opportunity to play in the majors, but they're both great players.
The best analysis of all the week's football from Ireland's #1 football man.
PSG, I thought professionally, were dreadful. Liverpool had that. Liverpool had an honesty about them that PSG didn't have and deserved to win it. It would have been a disgrace, I think, had they not won that particular game.
John Giles, every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
And a very good morning to you. Welcome along. It's 7:30 this Tuesday morning. Yesterday's Tuesday, the 14th. Had to look that up. The 14th of April. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We're here with you every morning from 7:30 all the way through until 10 o'clock for the duration of lockdown. If you want to get involved, if you want to get in touch, you can WhatsApp the show. 0879 180 180 is the number to WhatsApp. You can leave us a comment on whatever stream you're watching this. If you don't know by now, you must have been living under a rock, but we stream live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Periscope, and of course you can get us on Twitter at Off the Ball. The best place is actually the Off the Ball website, offtheball.com. A very busy show for you this morning. Coming up, we're going to hear from Stephen Kenny in just a minute. Owen's going to join us just after 8 o'clock. We're going to take you through the sports pages. We'll speak with Luke O'Neill about the ongoing debate about what the world situation must look like before sport comes back in whatever guise possible. We're bringing you our very first How's the Head. That's coming your way at around about 8:50 this morning. Those of you who are active on Twitter will have noticed that David Brady started on a whim, really. A brilliant, beautiful movement of ex-GAA players ringing people who might need a bit of a phone call and a bit of cheering up. So DB started it and loads of other people followed in. We'll talk to him at around about 8:50 this morning. Sorry, around about 9:05. The latest Mt Rushmore, we've done, what have we done? We've done Cork, we've done Mayo. Today it's Offaly, which on the face of it shouldn't actually be that contentious, right? A very successful county for a period of time in 3 significant sports. The reigning Open champion obviously is straight on. You're going to have to say that. So Will O'Callaghan has picked his, but when Will picked his, we also decided that it might be an idea to get Paul Rouse on. Paul Rouse is obviously somebody who knows a thing or two about sports history, having literally written many books on it. So there might be a little bit of contentious discussion to be had about who should be on Offaly's Mt Rushmore. That's coming your way at around about 9:20, and that's probably going to take us up until the end of the show this morning. As ever, if you do want to get involved in the show, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, use the hashtag OTBAM. Stephen Kenny obviously has been doing a round of media interviews. It's been a breath of fresh air to, just in case you missed this, to show you how fresh the air has been. Here's the conversation that Stephen had on Saturday afternoon with John Duggan here on Off the Ball. Have a look.
Welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through till 5 o'clock. 53106, the number for your text. We're also streaming live as well now, so you can get in touch with us on the Off the Ball social channels. On Twitter at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the Go Lad app. You can listen to us as well. We're delighted to be joined on the line by the new Republic of Ireland manager, Stephen Kenny. Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, John. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stephen. Well, first of all, congratulations are in order. I think everybody in the country wishes you well, and we're delighted that you've got the chance to manage the national team. We'll get to the nuts and bolts of that in a moment. But first of all, it's an unprecedented time. It's a worrying time for a lot of people during the pandemic. How are you and your family doing?
Yes, we're okay. There's 6 of us in our house, and we're okay at the moment. I think, one of my daughters is working from home. My sons are doing their homework, or not doing it, chasing them around doing it. One of my other girls in college, so they've been trying to stay active in and around the house. My mother, she's okay at the moment, but I haven't seen her obviously in quite a number of weeks, of course, and she's in Tala, so we're okay. I think I have some friends whose parents are in hospital at the moment, and they're having a tough time with it and so forth. So that's when I'm speaking to them. So it's just desperate times really at the moment.
They're difficult times, Stephen, and everybody, I do think, though, in the country's pulling together. So what have the last few days been like? What's the daily diary like in Louth for you there, Stephen?
Yeah, probably because, listen, I spent a lot of my time probably travelling over the last year because I was in the UK for a lot of under-23 games early in the year. A lot of players then breaking into first teams initially in League Two on loan or in League One. Then obviously went to Italy and Toulon for 3 weeks. Italy for the European Under-21 Championships, Armenia for the Under-19 Championships. So I've been travelling non-stop. So it's given me a chance, actually. I needed to get my finger out and do a bit of running, actually, for sure, over the last couple of weeks, and that clears the head for sure. You know, that's been a great opportunity just to do that. But I've been in touch with various local groups and so forth as well. But a lot of people are putting their shoulder to the wheel really in this crisis. Very admirable. I have a lot of friends who are nurses and doctors, some in Letterkenny, some in Altnagelvin, and some in right throughout Dublin hospitals, and Mortimer O'Connor down in Cork. He was I've been in contact with them. They're getting a couple of aunts, Siobhan's aunts, are cleaning. One or two. One is cleaning in a nursing home. So difficult at the moment as well in that situation. So yeah, I've just been keeping in touch with people and seeing how they are.
And we know you spoke to Seamus Coleman as well, the captain of the Republic of Ireland. He will be your captain. It's come sooner than expected, Stephen, obviously, with the contract situation, this unprecedented pandemic, and that you will be now the Republic of Ireland manager and replacing Mick McCarthy. What does it feel like, Stephen? It is the biggest job in Irish sport. How does it feel?
Yeah, I'm very proud. Obviously, very privileged, and it is a great honour to manage Ireland. I think that's the way I feel about it. There's only a handful of men really in my lifetime have had the job, so you only get one opportunity. So you have to absolutely give it everything, and no stone will be left unturned in pursuit of trying to be successful.
I was speaking to Shane Lowry, Stephen, at Christmas, and this was after he won the Open at Portrush, and it was a fairy tale, really. And I asked him what had changed, how his life had changed between July and December, and he said the one thing that had changed was recognition, that everybody, everywhere knew who he was. You're living in Ireland, you're living in Louth, this is a really big gig, there'll be praise, there'll be criticism, there'll be scrutiny. Your family, obviously, you'll be trying to protect them. Are you prepared for that, Stephen?
Listen, John, I'm not really fearful of that at all. I think the reality is I've had plenty of criticism over the years, and and some of it well deserved, I must say. But it's not something really that phases me. I know the level of criticism will be greater, and that's not something that phases me at all. The way I'm looking at this is that we're going to, from my point of view as a manager, and all of the staff, we're going to enjoy our work. Every single day you come in on the camps, in the international windows, we'll make sure everything is really well organised, and the sessions are really, sharp and certainly with a real purpose. And we'll do a lot of homework on the opposition, and we'll do a lot of homework on how we need to play, and we'll make sure that we're absolutely ready for the games. We want to enjoy the experience. I don't see it as something to be fearful. You're talking about the situation earlier on and what people are going through and so forth. So that, this is something that you shouldn't be fearful of. This is something really special opportunity, and so that's really the way I view it. I do view it honestly that way. That we're really going to enjoy it and encourage. Your job is really to unlock the potential of the team, to try and get players to play to utilise the full extent of their talent, and that's really part of your objectives.
You were a manager at 26 at Longford Town, Stephen. Then you won the league with Bohemians. You were at Derry City. You won the FAI Cup. You had a brilliant time at Dundalk, 4 league titles, 2 FAI Cups. Is there a thread? Is there a template for success where you've had it at different places? And obviously you've had disappointments, Dunfermline, Shamrock Rovers. But is there a thread? Is there a continuity regarding how you work to get teams to play a certain way and be successful?
No, I think I'm not the same coach I was even 2 years ago. I think you know what I did say with Longford doesn't bear any resemblance to what you're doing now. You have to consistently evolve or constantly evolve, and that's what you have to do. And I think and so many changes as well, really, in terms of so many changes in relation to on the IT side of things. I think when players at their clubs are getting really well looked after, and how in terms of the analysis side of things, and that's that's something that I'll make sure that we're absolutely ready for.
You've got your backroom team in, well documented at this stage, Keith Andrews and Damien Duff. And Keith, you worked with the under-21s. How well do you know Damien?
Yeah, well, I would have come across Damien over the years a few times, but I can't say we knew each other that well. Obviously, he was on the UEFA Pro license this year, gave me a chance to. I was an occasional observer on the course. I wasn't a participant. There was, Niall O'Regan that asked me to, the head of coach education, to come in as an observer, and I did. And we spoke quite a few times. And obviously, he did a lot of good work at Shamrock Rovers, and that was terrific. And under 15s, and certainly he was at the first team as well. And he went and done Celtic's under 20s, and then under 21s, and then went to the first team for a year. So he did really, really well there. And I think that was, that was very obvious. And, I think he's a very, very good addition. I think, I'm into clearly defined roles. I think I said that already as the management team. Yeah. And I think certainly I've worked well with Keith Andrews over the last 18 months. I've been lucky enough to have great assistants in my career. I've been lucky enough. My first ever assistant, Christy Campbell, in fact, with Longford, he was absolutely brilliant, but he passed away, and he's been very inspiring for me. But Keith Andrews has worked really well over the last 16 months together. I think he's very, very hard working. He's been with the under 16s, the 17s, the 18s. He's been with the under 21s with me, and I think he's had a good bit of experience with MK Dons as well, coaching there. And he's a young coach looking to, but he's had a lot of experience on the international scene already. Damien, we spoke about already. So it's a young, dynamic coaching team. Alan Kelly, very experienced goalkeeping coach, I think, and very, very specialist and a good technical goalkeeping coach. So I think we'll add some further members to the coaching or to the extended staff over the next couple of weeks. And that it all happened so quickly last week, so we had to sort of get that finalised over the last few days.
I think we're all excited, Stephen, about the way you play the game, your kind of philosophy about the game, progressive, attacking football, controlling the ball. I like the way you said about having a connection with the fans at the Aviva Stadium. I think that's very important, and that goes down through all the levels and grades of the game to schoolboy level. I'm a fan, I'm a broadcaster, but I'm also a fan of football. We're having an Italia 90 debate, Stephen, between 3 and 5 right. Today. I remember I was 11 during Italia 90. You were a little bit older than me then. And we were successful. But over the last 10 years as a fan, I've been frustrated by the way we play football. Have you been frustrated over the last decade with the style of play of Republic of Ireland teams?
Right. That's it's an interesting question because it very much depends on your own opinion on the game, and there's different people have different philosophies on how to see the game. And I think I think there's been some really great managers that have preceded me with spectacular CVs, some of them, and had with a great tradition in football. And, I have huge respect for them. But I do think that, there has been a focus on more direct style of play. There has been a focus on the physical attributes that we have. I think from my point of view, I will look to, I only get one crack at this, and I will look to change the way we play. It is important to me. It is very, very important to me. And I think to a lot of people, they want to really see a vibrant Irish team passing the ball well, cohesively, and trying to win games, and with an element of creativity, And I think, talk is cheap, and anyone can say anything. And I think that is one thing. But we've shown in the under-21 team, for example, this year, a real creative spark in all our games, and we've been prolific in the number of goals we scored, and we were fourth seeds in the group, and we're winning that group, and we had a great Toulon tournament. But obviously it's a different level. The senior international team is a completely different level. So that is the challenge, to make it a creative attacking team that people can connect with. I think there has been, at various times over the last 10 years, there has been a little disconnect, but I think there has been periods of success in that. Although we haven't qualified for three of the last 4 tournaments, and that's been that we have a chance to rectify that, because we're in the European Championship playoffs, coming possibly in October, November. We've six Nations League games, and we've also got the World Cup qualifiers. So I'm absolutely blessed, because in this year I'm taking over 3 brilliant competitions in terms of the World Cup qualifiers, with the big playoff in Slovakia and the six Nations League games. So huge incentive. I think everyone in the country wants to get to the Euros and have them in Dublin. That would be extremely special. And that's what everyone wants that. There's no players want to play in them. They know we haven't qualified for that many tournaments in recent times, as I said. So they want it. Their careers are short. International careers are short. They want to have special moments, and they want to qualify for tournaments. And we have a tough draw in Slovakia. There's no doubt about that. But we must prepare accordingly and do our utmost to try and get into the final against either Bosnia or Northern Ireland. So that's one of the phases. But yeah, I think if the game is in September, we'll be ready. Can he radically change everything in 3 or 4 training sessions? Probably not. Would I try and do that? Probably not. I think. But if there is 5 or 6 games to prepare, it gives you a chance to really get your stamp on how you prepare. I would obviously look for different things, but I don't mean that as an implied criticism of Mick McCarthy, because he has a tremendous career as a manager, and in his career, and I've got great respect for that. And also defensively, we were very, very good in overall. And that's not just with the back four. The whole team was set up to make sure they were very difficult to beat this year, and that they achieved that.
Yeah, and you've spoken about the defensive structure and the solidity we have there with John Egan, for example, Stephen, a ball-playing centre-half. But we did only, I suppose, score 7 goals in qualifying. Denmark got 23, Switzerland got 19. And I'm looking at the talent we have from under-21s, Adamida, Aaron Connolly is playing for Brighton. How far are these kind of under-21s, like Jason Malumbi, for example, at Millwall, who's playing regular football, obviously on loan from Brighton. How far are these guys away from breaking into the first team, in your view?
Well, I think a lot will depend on, their end. It is a strange period. There is talk of the season finishing, we hope, then a mini pre-season of sorts, and it will be a mini pre-season. Their speculation is only a 3-week break or something. So back into the new season. I think it'll be interesting to see how they go at their clubs. You mentioned a lot of players there. Will they be recalled from loan to their parent clubs? Will some of the players, the attacking players, be sent out on loan? Obviously, Adam Ida had a spectacular introduction. There's not too many players you can remember stand out to get a hat-trick on their debut in the FA Cup like that. It was terrific. Troy Parris for me, he's only played 4 games for us. He's got 4 goals, and I haven't even played him up front yet. He's played off the left as a number 10. Very, very instinctive, natural goal scorer. Interesting player, really. great attitude. Aaron Connolly obviously got 2 in his debut for Brighton against Spurs, but hasn't scored since and has been out of the squad in recent times. So for him to get rejuvenated and back into the squad, into the team at Brighton, they're in a relegation battle. It's not easy, but he has versatility. He's played off the left as well, so he has versatility. And of course, the other young player is Michael Obafemi there at Southampton, the other young attacking player who I haven't had much. I've only had him for 1.5 games. He's played for 2 games. He's played 1.5, and he's been injured. But obviously, he scored. He scored a couple of very high-profile goals, and he's been for one so young, he's done very well for Southampton. So we'll have to see how they progress at the start of the season and whether they can force their way in. A lot of the senior players, again, they'll be looking to maintain their place in their teams, in their individual clubs, and it'll be very important to do that. And I think because it is strange to finish so quickly and go again. That'll be a new experience, and then you're really straight into the international window. So that's the nature of it. At the moment, our first 2 games are Bulgaria and Finland. That'll be interesting. So Finland have already qualified for the Euros, so it will be interesting, and so we've a lot to look forward to.
James McCarthy is somebody that you'd like to convince maybe that there is a second act with international football with James?
Yes, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, there are reasons that some players haven't been playing, and I'm not fully aware of them all, to be honest. So we'll have to examine that.
Just before we let you go, Steve.
There's no doubt that James is a really talented player, and I think that's very, very obvious to anyone who's watched the game. I think he's a very talented player, but to be honest, I'm not fully sure of all of the reasons behind the scenes at the moment. So we'll have to examine that. Obviously, he had a very unfortunate time with injury with Everton, but subsequently moved to Crystal Palace and has played 22 games for Crystal Palace this season. So that's really impressive.
So what's the kind of plan now? How you work during this unprecedented time? Is it a lot of just research? Is it Zoom calls? Is it speaking to players? How are you going to be a football manager during this time?
Yeah, well, I think you have to look at everything as an opportunity. Like, we've got to do research on Finland, Wales, and Bulgaria. For the Nations League, we've got Slovakia. We've got to prepare for Slovakia and for potential final. We've got to. The beauty of White Scout, we have the White Scout system at the FAI, is that of every game from last year, I can watch from every championship, every Premier League game, or any other games for that matter, League One and so forth. I can watch any of the games from the season. So all of the staff, we will be taking in a high amount of games, watching them, analysing them, scrutinising them, and certainly watching Wales, Finland, Bulgaria, making sure our homework. There's already been a lot of work done on Slovakia, and Ger Dunn, the analyst, has sent me the dossier already, and all the video clips and so forth. I've watched the matches myself on Slovakia. Very interesting team, and so we've a lot of work to do. I did spend a lot of just a period before. The period before the break, if you like, I did spend a lot of time going to watch players who've been on the periphery of the squad in the championship, and I think I didn't focus on going to see the main protagonists in the Premier League, because you see them all the time and they're obviously playing well, some of those players. I focus on some of the players who were on the periphery of the squad or the team who were playing in the championship, and I was going to some of those games. And just to familiarise myself with their strengths and weaknesses, see them in their club environment, and just see how they did. And I think that's what it. So obviously, I'm keen to do a lot more of that. Once I get the opportunity and once we're up and running.
Yeah, it's great to hear the passion in your voice, Stephen, about what's ahead and we really do wish you well. And just before we let you go, I suppose we all have a bit of downtime, maybe some more than we would like at the moment without commutes and that kind of thing. What music you listen to? What box sets you watching? What do you listen? What's the culture in Stephen Kenny's household at the moment?
My musical tastes are quite diverse. So I think, I think we the family, obviously there's a lot of. I know the lads were. My two sons who are 14 and 16. We're watching. They watched the English game, of course. The 1890s. That was a good little series, and obviously they're feasting on Sunderland till I die and all of that. And the girls are watching different documentaries and different Netflix series, and my wife also. So there's plenty of that going on. But it's been very busy from my point of view over the last couple of weeks. So I've not watched too much. I've been, there's been very busy here between trying to get everything organised and so forth over the last week, and a lot of phone calls and getting things, trying to get things ready for the job.
Well, Stephen, we greatly appreciate your time. Thanks so much for speaking to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk, and the very best of luck with the new job with the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, John, thank you very much. Thank you.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side. I mean, this is not Irish dancing.
OTB Sports Radio.
Basketball would have been my main game.
The brand new sports radio station from Off the Ball.
That's my point. Don't play for us if you're a proud Englishman.
Now broadcasting 24 hours a day. Live on the Go Loud app, Alexa.
You have a whole new world of possibilities.
Google Home, tune in, and offtheball.com/radio.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
Who's your favourite superhero?
The OTB Kids Takeover. We're giving the stuck-at-home kids of Ireland a chance to interview some of the biggest stars in Irish sport.
Would you ever mistake the ball for something? Like, would you ever think a player has a ball when it's actually the other player?
That's a great question, Dara. Yeah, I had really bad eyesight as a kid.
You guys can ask them anything from what pajamas they wear to who's your favourite superhero.
Just go with, Superman.
All you've got to do is video your kids asking the question. Just get them to introduce themselves first, and then WhatsApp it to 0879 180 180. That's 0879 180 180. And don't forget to turn your phone on its side and shoot those videos in landscape mode, please.
What's your favourite stadium that you played in?
It's the OTB Kids Takeover, all week across the Off the Ball channels. The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning.
Good morning. We hope you're well. It's Tuesday the 14th of April, and this is the OTB Brief, the one-stop shop for your sports news every day. Now, the GAA may be facing the decision whether to host matches behind closed doors in the wake of yesterday's latest government briefing around the coronavirus pandemic. Minister for Health Simon Harris has said social distancing is going to remain a very big part of life until a vaccine or an effective treatment is found for the virus. A special congress will be held via conference call this Friday to allow the GAA's management committee make decisions regarding the structure of the championships. Elsewhere, the Italian Football Federation is hoping Serie A players can be tested for coronavirus in May to allow conditions for a season to restart. No date has been set, but the Federation is keen to finish the campaign, which has been postponed since March the 9th. The former Italy and Juventus striker Gianluca Vialli has been given the all-clear from pancreatic cancer. The 55-year-old ex-Chelsea boss battled the disease for 17 months. Premier League club Tottenham Hotspur have reversed their decision to place non-playing staff on a UK government furlough and reduce their pay by 20%. Spurs non-playing staff will now receive 100% of their pay for April and May. And Ireland's Rory McIlroy says the proposed staging of the Masters in November may aid his attempt to win the career Grand Slam. The Augusta Major is the only top-tier event McIlroy hasn't won. He says the Masters having a different feel could suit him. Coming up on OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio on the Go Loud app today with Ger and Eoin and Owen Sheehan. We'll hear from the new Republic of Ireland manager Stephen Kenny. The show starts at 7:30. Offaly is the feature county in our Mt Rushmore series. We'll be hearing from Will O'Callaghan picking his 4 best Offaly sporting legends of all time. We'll also be speaking to Luke O'Neill, and we'll hear from Mayo football legend David Brady. That's your OTB brief for this morning. I'm John Duggan. Please stay safe. For more, please check out offtheball.com. We'll be back tomorrow morning from 7 a.m.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Tune in 24/7 to OTB Sports Radio on the Go Loud app. Off the Ball 2019 IMRO Radio Awards Sports Programme of the Year.
Salah takes the shot. Oh, Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season.
Who will see their dreams turn into reality? Whose names will be etched in history forever?
OffTheBall.com, best online publisher at the 2019 Spider Awards.
A big breaking story on OffTheBall.com for you this morning. We have the very latest on the Mayo leaks. We now know what went on in that secretive Mayo County Board meeting.
2019 Irish Sponsorship Awards Best Radio Sponsorship, OTB Super Value GAA Roadshows.
Well, when she comes back, get your arse back here, he said. Star is out sitting on the swing and Darren O'Sullivan is pushing him.
OTB Sports Radio, live online 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
A very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM this morning. It's bang on 8 o'clock and it is Tuesday the 14th of April. If you want to get involved in any of the conversations that we're having this morning, you can text the show. 0879 180 180 is the number to WhatsApp us. You can also just leave a comment on whatever social channel you're using. We'll have a look at those. And of course, the best thing to do is just tweet us at Off The Ball. Owen Sheehan, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, Ger. What's the crack?
What kind of a weekend did you have? Long?
It was good, yeah. It was. I think that even though we're all kind of stuck at home and it feels like we're not doing much over the last few weeks to some extent, I think actually a lot of people probably could have done with the break over the course of the weekend. Anybody who might have had the few days off, I'd say probably feels the same thing. Like when you have an amount of time off, you tend to do stupid things with your time. Like something that wasn't so stupid that I did was like watch the first two Godfathers back in full. It's like I tend to do that when it's like I've got a lot of time now. What is the longest back-to-back movie series I could possibly watch at this point? And I did Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. So that wasn't stupid. Definitely not. Perhaps more on the stupid side, according to some people, I would say, was actually spending some of my time in the company of the NBA horse competition. I'm not sure if you've seen this.
No, explain what this is to a lot of us who are hearing about this for the very first time.
Well, it's your loss that you're only hearing about it for the first time because, ladies and gentlemen, you would have missed out on the quarterfinals of the NBA horse competition over the course of the weekend. Like I'm sure most people know what a horse is. What it is if you don't know, it's basically you line up, you take a shot, and your opponent has to copy that shot, take the exact same shot, and if they make it, then it's kind of a stalemate. But if they fail to make the same shot that you just made, then they will have the letter H beside their name. And if they screw up again, it goes O or S-E to the point where you mess up 5 times and then you're out. So the one I was watching over the course of the weekend was Zach LaVine against Paul Pierce. Zach LaVine being a Chicago Bulls shooter and Paul Pierce, of course, being a Celtics legend. And to be honest with you, this is really kind of a mix of MTV Cribs and NBA, really, because you're admiring their back garden and their mini basketball courts that they've got going on. Like Paul Pierce has this humongous Boston Celtics logo crafted into the floor of his back garden beside his trampoline. And then Zach LaVine just has this massive court and a really cool looking hoop. So basically just via video link and then via a presenter who is based in Miami, the NBA have been doing this thing. Like you had, there was like a Guardian Live blog of these quarterfinals, and the one that I missed apparently, which was the cracker of the round, was Ali Quigley of the WNBA, who beat Chris Paul of the NBA, and she managed to progress in a cracker by all accounts. The one, like as I say, Zach LaVine versus Paul Pierce was a complete write-off. Paul Pierce is a retired man, and he looks. Every year the retired man, I think it's fair to say. It's not fair to put a retired player up against an active player who's constantly sharp. So for me, it lost a little bit of respect on that front. But by all accounts, the quarterfinal that I missed was very, very good. So live sport just feels good. Just like I hooked it to my veins and I enjoyed it.
So how do you get to decide who goes first?
Because coin toss. They toss the coin live before doing it.
And if you said it's stalemate. So how do I win if I lose the coin toss? If I make the shot, do you get a H?
Yeah, so if you make the shot and the other person misses, then you get the other person gets the H, and then if you make if you don't make the shot but the other person scores, then you get the H.
Oh, so if I win the toss and I'm deciding what our shot is going to be, there's a potential for me to miss it, and if I miss it, away we go.
You certainly get to call the shots a lot more if you're going first. And in the one, like Zach Levine is somebody who appears in the slam dunk contest most years, and as I say, Paul Pierce is a very, very, very retired man. So it was a little bit unfair. Like, he was putting the ball beneath his legs at one point to do layups, and he was kind of looking on Paul Pierce with a little bit of pity. He beat him HORSE 0, if that's the technical score you can use.
Right. Okay. And you like this, obviously. It's it's and the technology is good enough that it's not over a dodgy Skype line, or is it over a dodgy Skype line?
Well, you definitely had like either Levine's girlfriend or wife or whatever. Certainly, she appeared in shock quite a bit following him around, because what it seems is that the NBA have like dropped off a stepladder with an iPad, and that's like your corner shot. And then you also have somebody who's actually on Steadicam. I presume it's a relative of Zach Levine, and there was a relative of Paul Pierce. So you had a 2-camera setup. It was actually pretty good. It was great to see something and watch a bit of sport that you didn't know the outcome of, even though when you look at Paul Pierce, you knew straight away that Zach Levine was going to crush him. But I'm looking forward to the semi-final, and whenever that is, I think it could be tonight, maybe tomorrow night, and then the finals over the course of the weekend. So get on it, everybody. Anybody who wants a little bit of excitement in their lives.
The other thing that people have been doing is Zwifting. Have you heard of Zwift?
I have. What is Zwifting?
So it's cycling, where it's essentially peloton for the masses, where you are actually up against world-class cyclists, and about 1,000 Irish people have been doing it. But I see Eleanor Barker is in the Telegraph today doing the same thing, and apparently it's quite easy to get this set up. So Zwift is an app. You need one of those, whatever they're called, where you put your bike inside and it lifts the back wheel, and so you pedal away. What's it called? Turbo Trainer. Thanks very much for that. It's called a Turbo Trainer, and you also need a power watt meter, which you can obviously order for like 50 quid on the internet. And the Zwift software puts you up against loads of other people. So, like, many professional teams are actually going against each other, and you can take part in these races. You can be like off the back of the peloton, like one of those goons in the Tour de France who somehow managed to break through for long enough to get on TV. And that's my ambition in life, is to get sorted out for this, to be able to be in a race and watch the peloton zoom off. So,
Is your 2-kilometre radius not providing you with enough of a challenge at the moment?
Well, within a 2K radius, you can do 10K fairly easily. A friend of mine managed to do 25K, but he got stopped twice by the cops at the weekend. They seemed okay. It's like, you're within your 2K, you're grand. I'm not sure if that's the spirit of the law, or if that's actually like totally against what you're supposed to be doing.
I would say what's against the spirit of the law is people who kept their peloton going longer than they should have, and kept those bunched groups going out on long cycles. I'd say I would say that if you're being a good loner and just sticking to yourself and doing your 2K loop, even if you're racking it over and over again, I'm sure that's still within the spirit of the law, because you're on your own. That's all that matters.
Be a good loner. Never have you said anything more on brand in your life. Okay, if anybody wants to get involved in the conversation this morning, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can always tweet us using the hashtag OTB AM or @OffTheBall or @OffTheBallAM. So Mt Rushmore has been fairly contentious. We're actually going to reopen the Mayo debate. I can't believe it's not like Mayo to hijack something early and to make us only talk about them, and for there to be a controversy involving Mayo this early on in something, but there is, and we'll hopefully put that to bed over the next couple of days. But Offaly seems relatively straightforward, no?
I was just actually about to make that point, that Offaly have a nice, tidy amount of sports stars and legends. They have a tidy amount of legends that you can actually make this fairly clear cut. It is something, however, that we will need to rely on the experts for the nuance. I think from the very top tier, I think we all know that Shane Lowry is the one head that's already been chiselled. It's beyond that, really, that you kind of need to listen to the lore and listen to someone like Will O'Callaghan, who we'll have on later, and listen to someone like Paul Rouse, who we'll have on later. Like we had Paul on a couple of months ago talking to us about Matt Connor, and every time you hear about Matt Connor, certainly I would say, speaking for myself, that I feel like I'm getting an education when I hear about him, because I haven't watched enough of him, I haven't seen enough of him, but he is held up as an absolute legend of the game, Maurice Fitzgerald-esque in his talent and underappreciated all round. That, like, really, when you talk about Offaly football, there is nobody more famous than Seamus Darby, but I think we all know that when it comes to the continued greatness and the best footballers of that era, he wouldn't be in the conversation here. So I think Matt Connor is the guy I'm looking forward to hearing a lot about later on, because I presume he's going to get his face chiseled up there. And like, you've got the hurlers as well. Like, if you take like all-stars as your radar here, then Brian Wheelahan and Johnny Dooley are certainly going to be in with a shout. And then outside of that, you've got like the likes of Pat Smullen certainly comes to mind for me, and Liam Kearns, who is, I guess, Offaly's answer to Jimmy Barry Murphy.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up about Seamus Darby. Obviously, Seamus Darby wasn't the best player in that team, we know that. But if you say you're the owner-operator of Offaly's Mt Rushmore, and this is a private enterprise, and you want to appeal to people from beyond the shores of your own county, you're putting Seamus Darby up, and you're having a whole story, and you're hiring him to do the launch, and you might be giving him a gig there 2 or 3 times a year to recount the story of how he stopped the 5 in a row. That gets the Kerry people, that gets the Dubs to come. They're all paying 20 quid in to see. The Dubs are like, yeah, you made us the only 5 in a row. Kerry are like, Jesus, we're picking the scab here just to remind ourselves of the hurt that drives us on. Like, if I was an entrepreneur building Offaly's proper, so it's Shane Lowry, it's Derby, I think, just for the bums on seats, for the box office.
Well, just to correct you on one thing there, Kerry would never admit that they would give any tourism revenue to any other county in Ireland, because they said it they don't deserve it. The point is that if you had to pick a more famous footballer than Seamus Darby from Offaly,
it's Richie. It's Matt Connor, yeah, not Richie. Matt, yeah. Like,
is it Matt Connor? Is Matt Connor more famous than Seamus Darby?
Well, I think of a certain age, yeah. I think Matt Connor's story, because his career is cut short in pretty horrific fashion. Certainly there was for people my age, certainly there was a storied reverence about his talent that I actually don't really remember many other people are, because, like, bear in mind the great Kerry team comes around that time, and he was talked about as being as good as any of those players. So same level as Spillane, same level as Jacko. Like, that's how people talked about him at the time. Whether or not that's accurate, and maybe there's, I don't know. It seems like from the footage you see that, like, he was as good as any of those. So.
But Ger, I would actually, I don't think I'd go along with that. I think Seamus Darby is definitely the most famous, because, like, the tone about Offaly in the early 80s is all wrong. Like, as if there were some ridiculous plucky underdog who managed to snatch this ridiculous defeat out of nowhere in 1982, which is just not the case. They were one of the best teams in the country, and I'm sure they would all argue that they were fully deserving of that All-Ireland in 1982 as being the best team in the country in that year. And the reason why they were held in that esteem at the time is because of someone like Matt Connor. But yes, down through the years, we kind of look back on it as the Seamus Darby goal and this ridiculous thing that happened, when it actually wasn't that ridiculous at all. It was a ridiculous conclusion to a game, sure, but Offaly beating Kerry at that time, well, it was no big fluke, because this was a sensational Offaly team led by one of the most sensational footballers of the time.
Yeah, it's funny though, like, certainly growing up in the 80s, we would have heard more about Matt Connor's genius than, like, because, remember, you don't see the goal all the time. So Seamus Darby's very famous, sure, but, like, I don't know. I think certainly if I'm a business owner, if I'm a ringmaster, I'm putting Seamus Darby up. If I'm, a sports historian, I'm thinking it has to be Matt Connor, right?
Or both. Let's consider both. Right. Like I said, this is going to be the real breakdown of, is it a football county or a hurling county? If, Will, is going to make it Shane Lowry plus three GAA people. He will be nailing his colours to the mast. Is it a hurling county or is it a football county? Of course, he could cop out and pick Liam Kearns.
Give us your views as well this morning. Is there a shout for Johnny Pilkington? I think certainly for best crack and interviews, he'd be right up there. You could have one of him and Dahi being like, Statler and Waldorf on the side, kind of looking over at what's going on, and that would be good too. Again, purely for box office reasons. It's 14 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTB AM. A quick update on what's actually happening in the world of sport. The GAA may be facing a decision whether to host matches behind closed doors in the wake of yesterday's latest government briefing. Simon Harris said that social distancing is going to remain a very big part of life until a vaccine or an effective treatment is found. A special congress will be held via conference call this Friday to allow the GAA's management committee make decisions regarding the structure of the championships. Elsewhere, the Italian Football Federation is hoping Serie A players can be tested for coronavirus in May to allow conditions for a season to restart. No date has been set, but the Federation is keen to finish their campaign, which has been postponed since the 9th of March. Gianluca Vialli has been given the all-clear from pancreatic cancer. The 55-year-old ex-Chelsea manager battled the disease for 17 months, and Premier League club Spurs have reversed their decision to place non-playing staff on a UK government furlough and reduce their pay by 20%. So this is the latest turnaround for a Premier League team. Spurs non-playing staff will now receive 100% of their pay for April and May. And Rory McIlroy has said that the proposed staging of the Masters in November may help his attempt to win the career Grand Slam. The Augusta Major, obviously the only top-tier event that McIlroy hasn't won. He says the Masters having a different feel could suit him. He was talking specifically about how the ball might fly, how the course might play long. This was in an Instagram with Michelle Wee. So he's certainly hopeful that the Masters will happen in November. I think we're all kind of hopeful that there will be some sport to talk about at some point, but the prospect of it happening sooner rather than later is clearly receding into the distance, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Here's what's coming up on the show. We have sports pages coming your way in 1 second. Luke O'Neill, who is a A&E consultant, is going to join us around about 8:35 to talk to us about the conditions that would need to prevail for sport to return. How's the Head is coming your way at 8:50. It's a new feature that we're bringing you every day about how Irish sports people are dealing with the mental challenges of lockdown and any advice that they might have for the rest of us. Call DB is David Brady making phone calls to people who would like a chat, which is a brilliant little initiative that he started himself, and that has now been rowed in behind by loads of other GAA people too. Offaly's Mt Rushmore coming your way at 9:20 with the Professor and the Pundit, I think we could call it, with Will O'Callaghan and Professor Paul Rice. So that's coming your way at 9:20. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
So we're going to start with offtheball.com. Here are some of Team OTB's TV and book recommendations, our lockdown special. And Eoin, what did you go for? You went for, very cliched, you went for Hoop Dreams, OJ and Football Against the Enemy. Yeah,
cliched indeed. So don't really need to say too much more about them. I guess just if you've got a lot of time in your hands, you can spend a bit of time with them.
It's like you put this list together in 1995.
Apart from the obvious exception that one of them came out 2 years ago. But I guess so. Bring it back.
The other stories that we're covering here, Spurs reverse furlough decision after criticism. So there was a wall of criticism of the English clubs who were availing of the government scheme to pay their staff. That's what I need to get the jacket. That's Rory McIlroy in that Instagram for Nike yesterday with Michelle Wee. And the 32 Mt Rushmore is Offaly's greatest sports people. So that's Will with his long list and who's on it. And then an interesting chat between Bradley Wiggins and Mark Cavendish. The British cycling apparently wanted their skin suits back after the Olympics, and they wanted their bikes back as well. But Bradley Wiggins wasn't having any of it. He kept it because he is the lad. He wasn't giving back any of the gear. No, they're my effing memories, he said, as opposed to them actually just being a piece of gear that you used. The memories are actually in your head, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's where Bradley Wiggins tends to keep them. I'm going to move on to the Irish Independent this morning. European football in lockdown, but Belarus carries on regardless. Photographs there of a stadium and a piece here find out how a 26-year dictatorship and interest from betting firms are helping one country defy COVID-19 concerns. A lot of Dynamo Minsk fans popping up around the world at the moment. Jeremy Wilson and Jason Burt this morning, writing in the Daily Telegraph, carried in the Irish Independent that former FA chief leads calls for radical reform of English games. So this is David Bernstein who's been talking about how the current crisis underlines a need for a government-backed regulator with statutory powers that would rebalance the entire game in the country. We'll come back to that story in just a moment. And Michael O'Neill is disappointed for McCarthy, but says Kenny will adapt to step up.
Yeah, I thought that was Martin O'Neill at first. I was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. But no, it's Michael O'Neill. Obviously, Michael O'Neill understands exactly what the challenge for somebody going from the League of Ireland is. So next for us is the Irish Examiner this morning. And the Examiner is leading with clause means no refunds likely for GAA season ticket holders. Whoever wrote the terms and conditions for the GAA season tickets is a very, very prescient person, because it actually mentions not coronavirus, but pandemics. The terms and conditions in the loyalty scheme specifically mentions pandemic. They state, in the event of the GAA season, Allianz National League or Championship being postponed due to circumstances outside of the control of the GAA, natural disaster, pandemic, etc., there will be no refunds available for GAA season tickets. Wow, I've got to say, that's up there with the Wimbledon folks having their pandemic insurance. Mullen says GAA will consider closed-door championship, and there's a great piece by Professor Jack Anderson going through a Q&A about where we stand with respect to the legal side of things at the moment. And then, again, there's just a suggestion that GAA not turning its back on closed doors is the piece from John Fogarty on the second page. And also the news that Johnny Glynn is recovering from COVID-19 in New York. Himself and his girlfriend both got it. It sounds like they had a bad old dose, but they're both recovering. So we sent him our best wishes, had him on the show recently when we were talking about the possibility of New York getting a second game, of course, in the football championship. Now let's hope that they actually get one.
The Irish Daily Mail this morning leads with Masters plan. McIlroy eyes up November rain to secure a slam. And John Mahon fears championship will be scrapped, which I think is going to be the growing fear over the last couple of days, that we won't get a championship this year. And champion of youth Kenny could turn to his old clubs when game resumes. That's the Irish Daily Mail.
The Irish Times this morning is how a footballer's birth month can affect their chances of reaching the top. I'm always really interested in these stories. Research into the relative age effect shows preference given to older players. Malone's done a bit of a deep dive on that today. Manchester City tracked teenage Ajax forward, so transfer gossip is continuing. Murphy appointed Leicester director of rugby. So Leicester have announced Steve Borthwick will take up his position as head coach on the 1st of July, with Jordan Murphy moving up to the role of director of rugby. Borthwick obviously is going to be responsible for events on the field. And then Jerry Thornley's column today is a 10-game 2021 Six Nations actually makes sense. I don't know if you've been following the rugby story over the weekend, but certainly rugby is fairly keen on taking the opportunity to use the crisis as a means of restarting their entire calendar. And frankly, you have to look at them and go, yeah, this is exactly the right thing to be doing. Have these conversations, give everybody some sense that you're looking at every available opportunity and possibility, and you're going to discuss them, weigh out the pros and cons, and then come up with the right decision. And they've been fairly open about it because so many different people are saying things, you know. So we had the interview Bernard Laporte did last week where he was talking about maybe the end of the European Cup and having a World Club Championship every year. It seems like Philip Brown was talking about all of the other things that the IRFU are considering, including a home and away Six Nations for next year, playing all the big games this year, and them being more important than the club matches, which is completely right, because, you know, they're the games that they're going to generate revenue from. So again, look, all of this is presupposing that we're going to get any games this year, which again isn't very clear at the moment.
The Irish Mirror this morning goes with my regret. Spurs players and fans force Chairman Levy to make humiliating climb down and restore full pay to staff. Kind of mad that you see here the headline as well, EFL to play again in 53 days time. So May 16th is when the pre-season starts, and June 6th is when the season really starts. It just seems outrageous that that will actually be met. And Odion Ighalo has been told he must take a £200,000 a week pay cut to stay at Manchester United. Yeah, he's not going to do that, is he? I would be surprised, to be honest, if that actually is seen through. It's a strange situation for anybody who is on loan, and obviously he could go back to China and perhaps earn, I don't know what it is in comparison to what he's earning in terms of the pay cut that he might have to take at Old Trafford. But if he can get his way back to China, I'm sure he will do. But I'm sure contracts will be redrawn. There might be different loopholes put in place by FIFA to extend things, but I would say Manchester United perhaps don't want to get into extending Ighalo's deal at Manchester United.
Is it a sports story on the front of the Sun? Couple drove 100 kilometres for a swim. I mean, technically, it's one of those things where, you can't actually have a proper pint. You really want a proper pint. You can't feel the water on your skin. You can't swim. It's like I really felt that over there. I would really like to be swimming at the moment. But a young couple were the first people to be arrested under the new Covid-19 emergency powers after they travelled over 100 kilometres to visit a beach. It comes as the HSE announced 31 more people died. The Irish Sun can reveal the couple from County Limerick were stopped by Gardaí near Kilkee in County Clare, which is quite the trip. They were lifted after they refused to give their names or explain reasons for their journey, brought back to the Garda station and warned about their behaviour before being released. So, what would you do for a swim? Probably not get arrested. Come on, you Spurs. Player power ends furlough plan and stadium to be COVID test centre. So Spurs about a month late getting to where they should have been in the first place. And June 6th, football gears up for restart. Peter Ridsdale planning the return. Cut not gonna happen. So Arsenal players turned down the opportunity to take a 12.5% pay cut. The PFA have essentially advised all of their players not to vote in favour of pay cuts, but only pay deferrals. And it was pay cuts as opposed to deferrals that were on offer from the Arsenal board. So a bit of a shit show around Arsenal at the moment. The
Irish Daily Star this morning is game over. Irish sport faces prospect of 2020 being a complete write-off. I think Simon Harris's comments yesterday have fairly quickly crystallised it all for everybody that sport as we know it is 100% a massive doubt for 2020, and the behind closed doors conversation, which we'll get into in a moment, is also a huge doubt. But it's game on for English football chiefs. You almost have to admire their perseverance in this at the moment, that they kind of view this is something that might actually go ahead. We'll get into the Sports Illustrated piece, as I say, in just a moment, where they've kind of broken down why this is an unbelievably ambitious project. Now, with the money involved in the Premier League, who knows what might happen. United in Real battle. This is Jadon Sancho. Looks like it's going to be Manchester United versus Real Madrid. If they can actually be in a position to get into a transfer war this summer and hammer time for Zlatan, Hammarby fans tried a sneaky glimpse of Swedish AC Milan striker Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who trained with the Stockholm club yesterday. He could be back in Serie A action sooner than later, with Italian FA chiefs now considering proposals for a May 31st return behind closed doors. And then you've also got an exclusive with Malcolm O'Kelly in the Star this morning. It's rugby, but not as we know it, he says. The back page of The Guardian has an Ian McKinley interview, actually. Lessons of the lockdown Italian fly-half Ian McKinley on an extraordinary month in North Italy, obviously an Irishman. Wiggins and Cavendish and Swipe British cycling, we talked about that. And Spurs say supporter pressure led to U-turn on furlough plan. The Times London edition, Spurs first forced into U-turn over furlough, players unhappy at club's original move. Training still weeks away, writes Matt Lawton, and game on brink, writes Warren's Union, I should say. The sense that a revolution is brewing in world rugby gathered strength yesterday as the Rugby Players Association warned that the professional game is on the brink and joined calls for a radical restructure of the sport. Not the only game, perhaps, that might be looking at radical restructuring over the next couple of months. And there is that photo as well of Zlatan. You can't lock him down. Ibrahimovic, who plays for AC Milan, was training with Hammarby in his native Sweden yesterday, where gatherings of up to 50 people are permitted. I mean, I probably would watch that training if they live streamed it. Just saying. There's a market there for that. The Herald has a two-page spread about inner belief forged on the streets of Dublin, and this is some of the best footballers that have come from the inner city. John Giles, Wes Hoolahan, Curtis Fleming and Stephen Elliott, all coming from about a 2-mile radius, or 2-kilometre radius, if you want, in inner city Dublin. And finally, for me this morning, the Irish News leads with Rory McIlroy's comments. New date for Masters can provide November rain, insists McIlroy. And it's not just Simon Harris who had sports fans on high alert yesterday. It was also Dr. Colm Henry from the HSE, their Chief Clinical Officer, of course. The headline that Cara O'Kane has gone with for his quotes is "Championships under threat amid government comments. All sporting activity in Ireland could be off limits for the remainder of 2020. His quote was, "Why would we beat that curve down, hopefully crushing it in the coming weeks if we all buckle down? If suddenly we all decided to congregate on beaches and football stadiums or matches," he asks.
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe there's another way, and we'll talk about that with Luke O'Neill at around about 8:35 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do it by WhatsApp. 0879 180 180 is the number, or you can use the hashtag OTBAM. It is time for the top 5 stories here. Number 1 is bursting our sport in 2020 bubble. This is off the back of the Sports Illustrated piece, essentially, which I think has kind of led to a lot of the questions that have come over the last 36 hours or so. So what will sport look like when it comes back? When will it come back? How will it come back? We'll deal with that in a bit more detail with Luke O'Neill around about 8:35. Football in England, a new future for football in England. And this is the back of several of the newspapers today, where the former FA chairman has said that he thinks that the FA is not showing enough leadership at the moment, and that the Premier League needs to put a lot of money in a fund that then gets distributed to the grassroots, and that actually there needs to be the exact same situation that they have in the States, where there's a commissioner who runs the game and decides exactly what the rules are. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through this yet, Owen, but my take on this is that there are too many rich billionaires involved in ownership of clubs in England already for them to give up any power now. The horse is bolted, surely.
It seems that way. And also, how do you tally it with the fact that there is always going to be promotion and relegation in this thing? Like, I mean, at least in the United States, you have a degree of protection. Of course, a franchise can pick up and actually leave your town, which isn't exactly the best feeling in the world, I'd imagine. But like, sport in the UK is a far more volatile thing. It allows you to take a club and make them more successful, and by extension make you a lot more money. But by the same token, it means that you can take quite a rich money that you think is a good cash cow and actually get yourself into quite a lot of financial trouble. Like, we've spoken a bit over the last couple of weeks about how we view everything, even historical things, through our COVID-19 lens at the moment. Like, when we see a handshake, we kind of almost cringe at that. When we see large gatherings at all football matches that we watch, we cringe at that. And everything you see is through this lens. And like, even watching Sunderland Till I Die over the last couple of weeks, just looking at how precarious their financial position has been, the conflict that they face about potentially living with the reality of not getting promoted from League One, and in Season 1, when people are losing their jobs and getting pay cuts because they get relegated from the Championship, you're thinking to yourself, God, this is in a pre-COVID world. Imagine what coronavirus will do to clubs like this, who actually depend on match revenues so much, who depend on television deals so much, where this is all going to go away. Jobs will be lost. It is already a ridiculously volatile environment. This will just make things so much worse. And you just fear the worst for a lot of clubs in England. And I guess you have to ask yourself the question, like, how does this get prevented in the future, or how is this going to be a bit more I guess, disaster-proof, and the disaster here, of course, being bankruptcy and clubs going down the drain, because this stuff can happen even without coronavirus, as we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly the conversation that is happening in English football at the moment, that there might be a pathway to prevent this in future. GA season tickets, the Examiner have it this morning, John Fogarty saying that there won't be refunds, given that pandemic is specifically mentioned in the terms. And look, I think the season tickets... people have had 6 rounds of the 8 matches of the league, and there might be a league match or two. We might end up having the leagues be the only thing that get finished this year, if there is room in the inter-county season, so that next year can start afresh and there'll be no championship. If there's only 2 games, what are you going to do? If there's only room for 2 weekends of inter-county football towards the end of the year, what do you do? So is this fair enough? The GAA is a community organisation, needs every bit of funding it can get at the moment.
Well, it's in the terms and conditions, isn't it? You can't really argue when something is in black and white, pandemic, literally written down there.
Did you read the terms and conditions?
No, of course not, for God's sake. I've got better things to be doing with my life. So 2 games, I guess, is what you'd be missing, plus 1 championship game. So yeah. You're missing out on 3 games, having got 6. You're losing 33% of the games you paid for, basically. Are people going to kick up a fuss about that? Since it's in black and white, I can't really see how people can give out too much about it. It's just an interesting note that the GAA have actually had this listed. As you say, the only other organisation who seems to have come close to any sort of proof to this thing has been Wimbledon, with this unbelievable insurance scheme that they had locked down for the last 2 decades almost. So like, these are the terms and conditions you sign up to. The box that you click before you give your credit card details is actually kind of important. Especially, it turns out now. 33 minutes past 8, we have 2 quick stories for you here before we get to Cora Staunton and Professor Luke O'Neill. First one is Dak Prescott throwing a party and Ronaldo's gym. Take us through these, Owen. What's Dak Prescott's party? Yeah, so the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Texas have got a situation in place where you can have gatherings of up to 10 people, but footage emerged on TMZ over the course of the weekend of Dak Prescott hosting a party for 30 people, like a fairly swanky party, I'm not going to lie. Nice little finger food up on the counter. Apparently there was some footage doing the rounds of Ezekiel Elliott being spotted at a local barbecue joint, like picking up said finger food. And then there was more footage later in the night of like a sit-down dinner. So I think it was his friend's birthday party, and Dak, obviously, after the finger food, they kind of moved into the dining room later on and had this nice round table where everybody got into a bit of fine dining. Like, this kind of comes a few days, I think it was like the day after April Fool's Day, where Des Bryant of the Cowboys had posted a photo of Dak Prescott and the guys with their arms around one another at the training facility. And I don't know, he's not doing his image any favours at the moment, especially if we want to get to a place where we have to trust our sports stars to get on with behind closed doors events over these next couple of months. Like, we'll get into the Sports Illustrated piece later, but human error is one way that this whole idea and this whole dream of getting sport play behind closed doors can just fall to pieces. And when you have humans like Dak Prescott, when you have humans like Kyle Walker in the world who will make selfish decisions, you do have to fear for the future of any behind closed doors games. The other incident then you mentioned, not an incident at all, it's actually just Cristiano Ronaldo posting on his social media account. And I've often wondered what's it like to be like the son or daughter of Cristiano Ronaldo. Well, clearly it means actually being used as a dumbbell, because he's now using his kids at weights to show off his fantastic gym routine. And that's what Cristiano Ronaldo's getting up to during lockdown. All right. A little later on this morning, we're going to get stuck into Offaly's Mt Rushmore, our third county, along with the campaign to sculpt Mt Rushmore of sporting greats in all 32 counties. Paul Rouse, Will O'Callaghan are going to join us in about an hour or so. Last week, Cork, Colin Bowie caused a lot of controversy. He chose Ronan O'Gara ahead of JBM. He really chose Chrissy Ring ahead of JBM, you'd have to say. We launched a series in Mayo with Nathan Murphy, despite having the honour of creating the very first Mt Rushmore. He screwed it up, essentially. The county of Mayo is going to be the first one that's been renovated as well. There's been a very high-profile campaign to force Nathan into making changes. Here's Cora Staunton, who's on the mountain, saying it needs to be changed. Have a look.
Just before we finish, Cora, and there's no need to thank me, I put you on our Mayo Mt Rushmore, first name up on Mt Rushmore for Mayo, and there's been a lot of feedback, as you can imagine, online to the 4 names. There was not one person questioned your inclusion. You'd be glad to know, on our Mayo Mt Rushmore. There were some questions over Kevin Kilban and over Kieran MacDonald, hard as it's imagined, and Liam McHale. I don't know if you think I got it right. Listen, you're 100% on it. So there's only 3 spaces left in Cora's Mayo Mt Rushmore. Who would you have up there?
Oh God, I'd probably
alongside
go for, alongside me. I'd probably have to go for mostly GA players. Because obviously I know there's been big debate whether Martin Sheridan should have been on it, but obviously that's a long time ago, and person obviously I wouldn't remember. But if it was based off my era, it'd be probably based off all GA players, and certainly Kieran MacDonald would be up there. Probably my favourite Mayo player of all time. After that, I'd probably have to put in Angie Moran as well. Another great stalwart for Mayo, has done tremendous work. And God, my 4th spot, who would I put? It's a difficult one.
It's not easy.
It's certainly not easy. I would probably put the likes of Lee McHale, someone like that as well. But that's just all GA based and from my era watching football.
No, that's fine. It's fine. You've agreed with 2 of my 3 selections, and Andy Moran was very unlucky not to get in. It must be. Listen, again, I can't imagine your personality to be as successful as you are by listening to too much of the noise. But that when conversations like this come up, like, there's no quibbles about you being on that list. You probably don't allow yourself to take the time to think about just how loved you are by so many people at Mayo.
No, I suppose, as I said, when you're a sports person, all you're looking is towards the next challenge, and how you can make yourself better, whether it's in the GA space, or for me now, if it's in the AFL space, you're trying to improve all the time and look back at your last performance and what you're doing well and what you didn't do well. But yeah, it's obviously it's I'm very humbled and honoured to be mentioned in the breadth of one of the best Mayo people, sports persons. I believe I'm probably not up there yet. There's a lot more better than me, but it's humbling, and especially more humbling when there's female that's also on it.
Paul Rouse and Will O'Callaghan are going to do the Offaly version a little bit later on for us. But at 8:39 this morning, we're turning to the future of sport and what it might look like. I'm delighted to say we've got Professor Luke O'Neill, an immunologist and Professor of Biochemistry at Trinity College Dublin, with us to kind of tease out a little bit about how we might actually return to play. I suppose there's two elements to this, Luke. There's the returning to play and the activity of the country, but then there's the return to play of the big matches that excite us and get people involved and interested, and what that might look like. I think nobody feels like we're going to have full crowds and full houses anytime soon. Will we ever have full crowds and full houses ever again? Are we ever going back to the way things used to be?
I hope so, Ger, don't we? I mean, for heaven's sake, can you imagine if it goes on for X number of months? The trouble is, big crowds are anathema to social distancing for obvious reasons. Nothing worse than a massive crowd together to spread this virus, because we know it's very contagious, as we all know by now. So until the virus goes away, there can't be big crowds meeting really, or until the amount of virus in the community plummets to almost zero. You can't have a situation where big crowds are meeting, sadly. And the big question is, when is that going to happen? It's the $64 million question at the moment, It will happen, remember. I mean, let's remain hopeful here. The only question is, how long is it going to take?
When you're looking around the rest of Europe and you see there's pictures of Zlatan Ibrahimovic training with a local Swedish club, because they have gatherings of up to 50. Every country has done this in a different way. The Bundesliga have allowed their players to train with social distancing. I'm not really quite sure how that works if... you're going up for a corner and the keeper comes out and it's like he sweats all over you. It's not really social distancing as we practice it, or are supposed to be practicing it ourselves. So what would a pathway look like to getting teams back on pitches in a way that would be safe?
Mind you, there's a good way to score a goal. Get near the goalie, he has to run away, doesn't he, to remain socially distant? But you see, the very important to remember, young people are pretty protected, remember. And the other thing is, people forget this, 99% of people get over this virus and recover. And if you're under 35, you have a very low chance of having a difficult disease, you see. So you may see loosening up to allow younger people a bit more freedom. That's the first thing that might happen. And they can start meeting again, right? And playing sport again is the first thing. The second thing is the tests are very important, Ger, as you know. And this antibody test is going to be extremely important. Because if you've got an antibody in your system, that means you've had the disease and now you're protected and you won't spread it, right? So we can see a situation where it's almost like a us and them situation, where people who have recovered, have the antibody, will be let out again. Now, why wouldn't sports people be tested for the antibody and let them join their team again and start playing? So this is the kind of things people are considering more generally to loosen the lockdown slightly with people who are protected. So I think it might move in that direction. That might be the next development. But you're quite right, though. A bunch of people together who are young, why can't they kick a football around? Might be the next thing. But we've got to be careful at the moment, of course, because any hint of this coming back would be terrifying for us all,
That's kind of the key thing here, isn't it? We're obviously not talking about now. We're not talking about in the next 2 or 3 weeks, in the next 6 weeks. It's when a point emerges where enough people have had it that they can corral themselves together. Like, how do we get there as a society? What actually has to happen, and what kind of framework is there for us to be able to acknowledge that has happened, and I guess what is the pathway for us to get to a point where we can begin to have those conversations?
Well, you're right about the under crowds of 50 to 100, remember. That's not a bad one to tease out, Ger, to be honest, because some countries have allowed that, and even 100 was said to be a reasonable limit, you see. So you might have a situation where anybody under 30 will be able to meet in crowds of under 50. That's a possibility, which allows for sport to restart. Obviously, competitive. You can't get the necessarily having thousands of people watching them, but certainly teams can start to play together again is one possibility, I think, especially once we see the thing turn. So once we see less cases, less ICU people in ICU, once the viral level in our society begins to drop, then we're going to see changes. And it might be, we're talking about sort of June, July, really. That's not that, outlandish in a sense, So we are certainly beginning to look towards June, July as a slight loosening. And then sport has to be a key part of it, as you know, because as we all know, sport is essential for our mental health and our physical health. So if I was in the HSC, I'd have sport well up the list as a thing to try to deal with sooner rather than later,
Luke, just on that, like June, July, so if you're looking at sport as one of the potential things to perhaps dip the toe into the water at around that time, are you thinking behind closed doors in a highly, highly controlled environment, much like how the Premier League and a lot of the American leagues are looking to proceed?
Absolutely. There's two ways to do it on. One is just for people to remember the amateur sport has to come back. Golf, tennis, people playing football, whatever. That's got to get loosened up soon-ish, because obviously people love that and it's having a big negative effect on people's lives. That's the first thing. And it could be a case of golf courses might reopen. You'll allow two teams to play if they're under 30, say, especially if you know that they're now no longer infectious. Then why wouldn't you stop them, you see? Now, the other events, it's a bit trickier. Again, let these teams play each other. You won't have many people watching them, sadly, but then the events can restart, I suppose. And why wouldn't you have that? And then ultimately, you might have a situation where the spectators themselves, if they've been given a clean bill of health and they're positive for the antibody, I can't emphasize enough, this antibody testing has to come to Ireland quickly. Why can't they go and watch the event, And you might have I bet you might have a situation where you give out 100 tickets and no more, that kind of thing, and 100 spectators will gather to watch two teams play. That might be the next step in this direction, because the less people who gather, the less it's going to spread. And that's why they put these limits on 50 to 100 people as seen as a reasonable crowd. The chance of spreading in that crowd is less than, say, 1,000 people crammed in to a small stadium or whatever. So I think we're going to see that move in those directions as well. And then remember, guys, exercise is so important for our immune system. You got to get out there and do sport, because we can just go for a walk at the moment, of course, but people get such a thrill from sport, and that really benefits the immune system in general. So, and the competitive element, of course, gets our body going, doesn't it? We get great stimulation from that as well. So we're going to see the discussion will have to move in this direction pretty soon, I think.
Right. That certainly strikes a more hopeful tone than, say, the Sports Illustrated piece that has done the rounds online over the course of the weekend. It was a piece by Stephanie Apstein, and she spoke to a whole range of people, from Zach Binney, who's got a PhD in epidemiology, and a couple of other people as well. And it's really interesting, actually. She, one of the things that actually stuck out to me, and I'd be keen to get your take on this, is that she says that any major sporting event hires ambulances, obviously. We've mentioned this ourselves. And if a player needs treatment by outside medical personnel, even just for a sprained ankle, he or she has left a secure area and will need to isolate for 14 days before returning to it. And of course, medical resources need to be abundant enough that society can afford to have ambulances and EMTs on call for games, plus doctors and nurses clad in currently scarce protective equipment who can tend to sports injuries. Even that very small thing, the idea of not just relying on vital resources from the health service in Ireland, but relying on them to be, self-isolating for 14 days, ensuring that no contagious disease is going to be passed on between player and health worker. That is surely a huge concern before we can even think about behind closed doors events.
Well, I think she's right, obviously, and that's a consideration. But remember, I've just given you almost like a science fiction world in a sense where you know who's protected and who isn't, okay? So I give people a badge that says you have been infected and you won't infect other people. That means you're now bulletproof, okay? Everybody out in the community may well be, or the first people to be released will have that badge. And that means doctors as well as nurses and everybody, So there'll be a set of people out there who are now protected and aren't spreading the virus. And they're the ones that might get deployed. And that might be the way out of it. You can't do it for the moment because, again, is everybody being tested? No. And she's right in the sense if someone got badly injured, they'd be taken to a hospital. Is that spread? The risk is spreading the infection. And we have to make sure that this is not spread. And that's our first consideration. And careful measures is one. But secondly, having people who are immune out there is the second way, So I think we should begin to discuss those kinds of things as well. And not to downplay the seriousness of maintaining the point that she has to maintain a lock on this in a way, and consider how it might spread and come up with ways to make sure it doesn't spread.
Yeah, and then just kind of one final thing that kind of came to my mind, even if we're looking at it from a really Irish perspective on all of this, and like you talk about the importance of sport coming back, and I guess people who play the amateur game, and that goes to the very high level of high performance in Gaelic games, which is something that's constantly been up for debate over the last couple of weeks. The fact of the matter is that trying to control a bunch of amateurs is a very, very difficult thing. And I'm not saying that it's to do with their personality or anything. It's to do with their jobs. Like, there are frontline workers who are GAA players. Do they automatically get barred from playing GAA because they're vital workers in their own field? Like, I would have thought that actually it's more realistic to say, no, we can't possibly have any amateur games organised where people have to be making decisions, where counties can't field the full complement of teams because they've got doctors on their teams who, of course, can't be pulled away from the health service at the moment.
It's a new world now, let's face it. I mean, you might have a situation where people get on the team who wouldn't normally say, right, because they mightn't be as good as the other guys, but then only a certain number of them are given the passport, you know. So you might see a kind of a strange sort of situation where teams are made up of a different set of players. But again, it's got to start with a very simple question. How important is sport to us all as a country? It's extremely important, both the amateur and professional level. How do we start to get it back, to go back to some kind of... Is there a way through this? Now, what I'm proposing or suggesting is stuff I've been reading about online and stuff. You know, there may be other ways to try and do it. Of course, the spectators want to watch it as well. Is it okay to have an empty stadium? I'm sure the two teams wouldn't mind, would they? I don't know what you guys think, but it'd be a funny atmosphere, wouldn't it? But still, at least the teams are playing, you know, and they might have the team might be made up of everybody who's carrying the antibody. You never know, you know what I mean? So there may be ways to do it, and I think the sooner we can get back to some kind of activity, the better for everybody. Because remember, there's two important things for the general population at the moment. Exercise is very important for your immune system. And that doesn't have to be sport. It can be just going for a walk. But obviously, sport is massively beneficial there. And stress is a huge negative, remember. And we know now over the past 10 years, at least, that stress really damages the immune system. What's a great way to de-stress? Watch a sporting event. Of course, if your team loses, that might make you more stressed. But certainly overall, we know sport is a massive de-stressor. So again, that justifies a close examination of this, trying to get that back. Because that will help people get less stressed. Their immune systems are stronger. That helps us fight the virus. So it's a very important consideration, I think. Is there a non-science fiction world where we don't all have an antibody passport system, say, for example, or however we denote the fact that we have the antibodies and we don't? Is there another way of doing this, or is that the only way? We have to reach a point where some form of herd immunity has actually been built up. We've been through this long enough, or we've had a vaccination program. Yeah, you got to be very careful, Ger. The biggest fear we have now is opening up too soon. Because the virus could be lurking out there somewhere. We don't quite know where. There could be some people with it. A very important thing is, remember, people without symptoms can spread the disease. That's really worrying. That's the most worrying thing about this virus of all. SARS wasn't like that. The flu isn't like that. You know, so there's people walking around thinking they're healthy and they're spreading the virus. That means we've got to be very careful now how we open up the lockdown. Can we be sure the virus has gone away? If it hasn't, you get what's called an epidemic yo-yo. This is the well-known phrase among epidemiologists. It comes back again. And then we all have to go to lockdown again. And then we get out again. You have a series of ins and outs. Tony Holden's kind of suggesting we have to have some kind of lockdown for quite a while, you know. So it's really important to keep all these things in mind and be extremely careful. The immune passport is one way out for definite, really. That's the most sort of copper-bottomed way to do it in a sense, because now you know people are protected and they can go out and about. That seems to be the main thing. But getting back to your other question, Ger, when the vaccine comes along, remember, and there will be a vaccine, everything changes and we're almost back to normal. Now, it might take a year and a half. People have to keep in mind it's a long haul, that society will not come back to the way it was before for at least a year plus. And the question is, in that year, what do we do, you see? There's talk about other approaches, by the way, antibody-based therapies. You can give someone who's been sick, take their antibodies out of them and give them to someone else. That's showing great promise. The third thing that's exciting people is an antiviral drug that will kill the virus on contact. There's one, and we're going to know in about 3 or 4 weeks, to be honest, if it's working, you know. These change the landscape entirely. Because you can imagine if the antiviral drug works and you give it to sports people, let's say we pick them out as the most important in society, that kills the virus in those people, and now they're free of it, you know, and now they're back out again. So these things are happening in real time. And I predict if we go forward to May, June, different landscape because of all these developments. That's our hope, by the way, that these things start to work, you know. So there is another way out of it, which isn't just business as usual and hope for the best. These scientific developments should surely help us as well.
Yeah, okay. Look, that's all much more positive, to be honest, than we were all sharing the Sports Illustrated going, and in the aftermath of the announcement of the weekend. I guess it is the unknown unknowns that we're entering into, and the hope has to be that the entire global weight of the scientific community focused on one problem will lead to a solution much quicker than we've ever seen before.
Absolutely, Joe. The amount of effort is unbelievable. I've been saying this several times, as you know. I mean, the amount of effort going behind this virus is spectacular from the scientific community. Now, obviously, they're doing it to try and get there quickly and so on. I'm going to be careful. There are a number of caveats in all this, remember. The risk is the virus won't go away for months and months and months. The risk is the vaccine won't be available for a year and a half, you see. The risk is some of these new approaches won't work, and that pushes out the timelines then, you know? So we got to get ready psychologically for that as well, I think, to prepare ourselves. And that Sports Illustrated thing, I mean, that they did make some good points in that, obviously, you know? So again, caution is our friend here. But I'm a terrible man for optimism, you know? I think we got to put our best foot forward, look at what the best options are going to be and stay realistic, you know, and keep a lid on this, obviously. But there is optimism. Remember, we've done a great job in Ireland, guys. Remember, we flattened the curve, as you've seen. You know, I predict towards the end of May, there'll be a big announcement that we've all done a great job, and they'll begin to unlock. We'll see some approaches, and sport must be part of that discussion, I think. All
right. Realistic optimism. We can all get behind that. Luke, great stuff. Thanks a million for making time for us this morning.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Always great there to hear from Professor Luke O'Neill, immunologist and Professor of Biochemistry at Trinity College Dublin. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us 0879 180 180 is the number. Now, let's move on. Today on Off the Ball, we're launching a new series called How's the Head? Over the coming days and weeks, we're going to be talking to sports people the length and breadth of Ireland and simply asking, how's the head? We're going to hear how they're coping during the crisis, what they're doing to keep their mental health in order, and find out what advice they found useful from their sporting careers that served them well during this stressful time. We'd love to hear how you're getting on as well. What's keeping you sane? What's got you through the last few weeks? You can WhatsApp Off the Ball 0879 180 180 or use the hashtag HowsTheHead. Every day we're going to be releasing new videos on all of our social channels, starting today with Irish Rugby International Michelle Claffey. Have a look.
It's been very strange, totally unexpected. Like, rugby has just come to a massive halt, and it happened so quick. So coping well insofar that doing a bit of training every day, kind of get outside, get some air, something that signals the end of the workday. So you get out, get a bit of a break, and then come in and sit inside. I was doing a commute in the morning, probably an hour and a half each way and an hour and a half back home. So like no train, no trying to navigate Dublin buses, no trying to rush out of work to get the train home so you're not going to miss the next one. So like life has slowed down in a really nice way that way. So you're not panicking or pressure on time, or like, it's been great to be able to work from home, and there's definitely a lot of benefits, mental health benefits from being able to work from home, and you're not stressing that kind of way. The Irish strength conditioning conditioner, Orla Curran, has been brilliant. Like, she's really adapted all the workouts so that anyone who's at home who has no equipment or anything can do whatever. So a lot of body weight circuits. So you think that, oh yeah, grand. It's not. It's really hard. But we're quite lucky here insofar that we have a space at the back in a gym. So I've got like a rig and dumbbells and bumper plates and an assault bike. So I can do at most things that we would normally do. So it's nice to get a break out the house, escape out the back, do a bit in the gym, and then go for a run down to the beach and stuff during the day. It's well inside the 2K as well, so it's up and down. So I try to get our speed times up a bit better, which is interesting. I started actually watching Love Hate again, the RTE drama. So that was quite good to kind of watch that again, because you forget, because I can't believe it was 7 years ago. 6 years ago, kind of finished up. So a bit of a refresh on that. And then I have a lot of work to do just for my manager position in EY, but also I'm doing a master's in Hibernia. So that's keeping me flat out busy. Well, I think structure in a timetable of a day, like for us here, that it's breakfast same time, lunch same time. And the thing I found most is that I was sitting so much during the day, like my hips got tight, my back got tight. So and reaching 10,000 steps was pretty hard. Especially when like your commute is from upstairs to downstairs or downstairs to upstairs. So it's kind of like you need to kind of get a break every hour, get up out of the seat and just kind of move. And also we need something to signify the end of the day or else the end of the week. So what I've been doing is closing down the laptop screen and just walking away from the desk. And
that's our new series, How's the Head, which will be going live every day across all of our social channels. And that was Michelle Claffey giving us some advice there. 087 918 180 is the number to WhatsApp us here if you want to get in touch with us, and if you've got any thoughts that you'd like to share with us, particularly if you want to just tell us how's the head. It's coming up to nearly 9 o'clock. It's 8:58 here this morning on OTB AM. And we're not done yet. We've got another hour to come your way. We're going to be getting into the ins and outs and the wrongs and rights of who should be on Offaly's Mt Rushmore. A reminder, though, that our OTB YouTube channel and all of our podcast streams on the OTB Podcast Network are completely free to subscribe to. They're jam-packed with quality content. The Sunday Paper Review and our Italian 90 review with John Duggan, with Dan and Johnny. The feature interviews with Stephen Kenny, Jason McAteer, former Limerick hurler Stephen Lucy and Robbie Power from Friday Night Racing, as well as our OTB Culture Hall of Fame piece with Irish sensation Dermot Kennedy on OTB AM, which is well worth your time. You can subscribe to our podcast stream wherever you get yours. We'll timestamp the OTB AM one for you as well, and you can scroll through to wherever you want. On Saturday, the lads look back at Italian 90. Here they are talking about Maradona.
I've never seen somebody who has experienced such fame and religious obsession as Maradona did in Naples. It was like, this was a team, a club in the south that never won the Italian league. Clubs in the south didn't win it. And this guy, with obviously other players around him, wins the Italian league against that Milan team, and Inter Milan at the time, wins the UEFA Cup. Then says before the semi-final that the people of Naples should be backing Argentina and me rather than their own Italian people. And I think that was just a step too far. And then I think the whole environment turned against Maradona, and he did really work hard at his fitness to get back in 1990. But it was a real, it was like something out of a movie, and obviously they did make the movie on it, that this guy who was an almost religious figure in Naples would end up knocking Italy out. And he was the guy who scored the last penalty for Argentina before Serena missed, and Goicoechea, a reserve goalkeeper, saving it.
Yeah, and, you know, Maradona didn't do an awful lot more bar score his penalty, which, you know, a player of his ability you'd expect him to do, yes. It was almost like a knife in the back for the southern Italians. And, you know, we have these notions of countries like as if, oh, it was always this country was there or that country was there. Like, what was the line from the Italian premier at the time? We've made Italy, now we must make Italian. So Italy's a complex country, and Naples would very much be seen, be looked down upon by many of the northern Italies and the more kind of well-off areas, and that's why the Maradona story in Naples had so much kind of romance to it, because he was going back, having come from such poverty himself, and you know, going to be a hero, basically a god. My friend Mark Doyle, who works for Gold.com, he's based in Italy. He's been to Naples, and you know, he sent me a few photos recently. You know, his image still adorns walls all over Naples, despite the fact that we're now 25, 30 years on. And he was an absolute hero that went way beyond football, and what he did there, you know, was more than any politician could ever do in a very, very complex city with real raw emotion. And the very fact that that game then took place in Naples, and I kind of agree with you, John. I think when you say he was never the same again, having watched the movie, I'd speculate that that was something of a turning point in a life that was probably very much going the wrong way as it was. And I found the Maradona movie, I remember watching it. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. It was like the weather we have today. And it came out of, you know, it's always strange going to the movies in the middle of the day when it's baking hot outside. But it came out into this kind of beautiful Dublin day, just kind of reflecting on what it was like for him to be playing in Naples, to be an absolute hero, to be playing on days like this where, like, you know, the world was at your feet, and ultimately how it just became so tragic in the end. But I do think mentally that would have hurt him a lot, because he was an absolute hero, yet he was probably spat upon by a lot of Napolitans after that for what he did, even though all he did, as far as I'm concerned, is score a penalty for his own country.
Well, he shouldn't have done the call to arms before the game. That was a mistake. But the guy is only a human being, and people always thought Maradona was this kind of, you know, cartoon character almost. Oh, he just do amazing things in the football pitch, won the World Cup on his own. But he was a human being, and the fame and the pressure that was on him was just off the charts.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
This is OTB Sports Radio, Thursday Night Football with John Giles.
Who was that talking?
Troy Deeney.
Well, I think he should keep his mouth shut and have more respect for the opposition when he plays against them, and look at himself. If he was such a great player, was able to do all the things that he's talking to other people not doing, he wouldn't be on the bench, he'd be out there playing.
The best analysis of all the week's football from Ireland's #1 football man.
Obviously, after the Ger disaster, it was thrust on Bobby, and there was an awful lot of pressure on Bobby. He was carrying the team, and he handled himself brilliantly, and he played unbelievable stuff.
John Giles, every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
2 minutes past 9, time for us to welcome David Brady to the show. DB, how are you getting on?
Sure, buddy. How are you keeping? Hope all is well.
I'm very well. How's the head?
Good. Head is good. Head is good. Yeah, I have to say. The weather helps, and I suppose that more importantly, the heart is even stronger. That's the main thing.
It's funny how I think for a lot of people it kind of comes and goes. The existential fear of Jesus, what the hell's going on? To actually, you know what? I've found a bit of a rhythm here.
Yeah, it's the ebb and flow of it, and you're kind of going, oh, here we go again. But you're kind of going, you know what? We have to take some positives in some way, shape, or form out of it. And look at that. For me, this is not about sport; it's about life and everything else. It's a chance to recalibrate, reset, and saying, you know what I've been doing, the way I've been living, and the way I've been working. Is that the way forward, or can we all get a better balance in life and appreciate the small things? Because, you know what, I have to say, Ger and the rest of you, how in the name of God you're talking about sport with no sport is a credit to yourselves, because at the end of the day, yes, we listen to ourselves, but we have to listen to what's going on in the world. And I have to say fair play to you individually as a group and off the ball, because it's phenomenal what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, we're in a life where it's not normal. Things aren't happening that always happen. Then we just have to compromise. Some of the nicer things I've seen, and even talking to people over the last couple of days, is that, you know what, people are out kicking ball out their back garden or out in the green with their dad again. I've never seen as many kids one-to-one with their dad, or, you know, two kids and their dad kicking a ball to each other in the park. You don't see that no more, and I think, you know, for me, it's the small things that I'm taking out of it.
Yeah, life lessons for all of us to live better lives by thrust upon us and forced upon us. But that point you're making about everybody looking around going, is this how I'm supposed to be living my life? Is this like, have I been wasting a little bit of my time? And the answer is obviously yes. A lot of us have been wasting a lot of our time.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, it's a good time to reflect on everything else about what has gone on in our lives and the way we work and the way we do things. And yeah, you go and look at I myself, again, I do a lot of travelling, I do a lot of running, racing. Yes, I have to go on and travel internally and externally in the country, but it's still, can you provide some of what I do in a different way, in a different format that saves me time and probably other people time as well. Look, we all need a human interaction. We all need to look someone in the eye. We all need that kind of face-to-face. But, yeah, it's for me, I know I have two kids, 6 and 2. I'll never in my life, until I retire, and they'll be well gone. They'll be rid of me at that stage. Never spent as much time with them, quality time, or, again, as the man says, giving off time, some of it. But you kind of say, you know what, hold back. Don't lose the rag. And I do be telling them the same thing to myself. Don't lose the rag with Daddy. I'm only here with you too. But it's good. It's good.
Does that work? Is that the best bit of advice that we're going to get today? Tell your kids, don't lose the rag with me. Does it work?
Yeah. Put the hands up. I'm only here with you too. But we're all in this together.
A classic. And so, the reason we're talking to you this morning specifically is that over the course of the weekend, you just put out a tweet about if anybody wants a phone call from you for people to get in touch. So, tell us first off about the message, where it came from, where the impetus for this came from.
Yeah, I spent, I suppose, Friday and Saturday in the garden, and man, says lovely weather and everything else. And I went onto my phone. I had a direct message from a guy called Kevin, and I read it, and I kind of went, right. Kevin was asking me, and again, he gave me a degree of detail that said, you know what, this guy is really, you know, asking for a little, and it was more or less that, his father himself go to Mayo matches. They're Mayo mad in all intents and purposes. They loved the games in 90X and loved the games in 2004. And I think watched my Locker Gale programme there last Thursday, 2 weeks, and said they really resonated with what football means to people. He says, I know this is an off chance, but he's a widower. He's farming down in Wicklow. He moved there 39 years ago, approximately, and would there be any chance you give him a call? It could lift his spirits. And I went sound of the pound, no problem. And to tell you, Ger, at the conversation that I had, and the subsequent conversations I've had with people, would do your heart good on the coldest of days. And it turned out that Tom was herding 2 heifers when I rang him. And I'm kind of going to myself, right, how do I pitch this? Because, geez, maybe he mightn't even remember David Brady. So I went, Tom, how are you doing? You don't know me? He goes, I don't. I says, I don't know, have you ever heard of me anyway? But I says, my name is David Brady. I'm from Ballinal, Mayo, and I played GA for Mayo for 16 years. And I could sense it straight away. He went, is this a skit? I says, no, Tom, it's not. I says, I know you're down there in Wicklow, and you've been GA mad like myself. I said, look, Kevin, your son, give me your number. I hope you don't mind me ringing you. And for the next 25 minutes, I had one of the nicest conversations, and about life and about football, and like he broached the subject. You're into cancer yourself, and I work in the area of oncology, and that was for me a sign to say, well, I says, what have you had experience with yourself? And it was more or less that his wife died 15 years ago. And you know what? From any man and everything else, he was more or less saying, yes, he missed his wife. And we went through conversation about his 2 grandkids, and his way of saying he loved his grandkids was, I do be a bit narky, but the 2 grandkids, they've softened me up. And it wasn't sad, but it was lovely. And this is a man, and it turned out at the very end of the conversation that the 2 heifers that he was herding was for an 83-year-old neighbour who had a test, a veterinary test that next morning. And he was doing his good while I was doing my very small piece. But the minute I came off that, I said, you know what? I can do that. So I did put out the message to say, if there's anyone in any corner of the country or the world that has a mother, a father, and I said heifer as well, that wants to talk to you, I'll talk it. And to say it has been absolutely heartwarming. It has been unbelievable, the conversations I've had in every corner of the world. New York, England, Spain, down to Mayo, down to Oris, to Dublin, people living in Dublin. It's just been absolutely fantastic. And it hasn't been, you know what I've done, Ger? I've listened. And it hasn't really been about football. It has, yes, in the context of me ringing them. The hardest job to have is to get them to believe me first. But it's life stories. I'm talking to people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I talked to a man called Liam on Sunday, and he's 82, 83 coming and remembers 1951. But it was just their life stories that they're telling me, and I'm learning more about games in the 60s against Galway and the rivalries back then than I ever knew of football. And I think it's, for me, it's no matter who will ask me, I will every single one of them bring them personally over the next 3 weeks.
It's funny when you say it's not really about football. It turns out people just want to have conversations, right? And
that's exactly it.
And they want to have meaningful conversations, I think. Like, we haven't always been good at having conversations where we get to the truth about what's actually happening. We have let's talk about the weather. How are you doing? I'm grand. Let's kick the can down the road. Whereas actually, it turns out everybody's lonely at some level, unless you actually find people not to be lonely with. And I think that there's probably an honesty coming about people's conversations now for the first time.
Oh, Ger, I'm telling you. And man says 20, I'd say the minimum I've on to anyone is 10 minutes. 35, 40 minutes have been the longest. Like I phoned a man, Thomas, yesterday. His son got in contact with me. And he tells me his life story. He was 7 when he had TB. Missed national school, went working on it with his hands, labouring. Ended up that he could be a plumber or electrician, and anyway he worked in so many sites. But he went back to college at 50 years of age. Did architectural design drawing at 50, qualified at 55. Now he's 67. And he had his heart stopped 5 times last August. And he said, you know what? He says, I was gone because I put the head back and I was gone. And every time he said the heart stopped, I knew I was gone. I'm going, Jesus, this is life. This is a man that I've never met before. Rang him, and again, you're David Brady, are you? I said, I am, Tom, I am. And we're trying to make myself believe I was who I was. But the conversation I had with him, and he's had pneumonia twice, so he's in a very, very vulnerable place from a health point of view. But I had a 25-minute conversation with him yesterday, and it was, you know what? I'm coming off these phone calls with a pep in my step. And I think it's even Alan Brogan, in all fairness to Alan, if you look at Alan's Twitter page now, he has some amount of phone calls to make, but Alan is doing it as well. And you can see some of the messages that's coming back from the sons or daughters, or like, you rang my mother today, you don't realise how much it meant to her. These small things. And for us, look at, man says, yes, we're still working from home. We have time. And it's to make that call and ask. And all I'm asking is, how's things? How are you keeping? And you know, Ger, you work in this business. The most important part of any conversation is listening.
How hopeful are you, David, that this is actually part of what our lives will be in the future, that even after you're finished a busy day at work, you will think about picking up the phone to somebody and asking, how are you?
You know what? If I learn one thing, and it's even in the course of conversation face to face or picking up the phone, it is that you know what? We have no one else to look after except each other. Whether you're, and I think it is the whole thing now of you're nearly stepping sideways on. You're just stepping 20 yards from humanity every time you meet someone, or it's not natural to us. And the one thing we can still do is talk. We can still converse. We can still get each other's message across. And again, as you said, the most basic thing: how are you? Because it's not natural for us to be dodging people on the street or in a path or walking 10 yards across the other side of the road. And that's what's going to be for a while to come yet, and a good while to come yet, months, from a social distancing point of view. But it's look at, and no matter where you go, we haven't got games on, we haven't got sport, but we have our conversations and we have our voices. And whether it's face to face on the other side of the street or the other side of the garden fence or on the phone, I think it's good to talk. And I have heard nobody. And I'd say now I'm up on 35 phone calls, 40 phone calls, conversations, and I've had nobody. And these are elderly people. I think we need to take a lesson from these. These are people in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that are not holding back, they're not afraid to say or to tell a story or tell me some part of their life. There was one more man yesterday I was talking to him, and he's moved out of his house into a bedsit. Very, very, very much involved in GAA. When he moved up, he was a psychiatric nurse from Mayo. Started in a junior club, but had a very, very influential say in a prominent county footballer's life at the minute, that's playing for Dublin at the minute. What was a simple thing from a young coaching perspective, but he's living in a bedsit. His wife, does catering in Beaumont Hospital. His son is a physio that's self-isolating because his partner, the buddy that he worked from a physio perspective, got COVID. So he's moved out of his house. And you know what? I had a fantastic conversation with him about what football meant to him. But again, the little things he did for players, or the little, from an under 10 or under 12 coach. Now he goes out for a walk in the morning, and from 7 to 8, and he said, "Don't be laughing at me." He says, "I do a few squats." I think he's 71 years old. I said, "You keep doing your squats." But he was. I've heard nobody in my conversations, boys, negative. Not an absolute one. And they're 60, 70 or 80 years of age.
It's very interesting, Dave, that you touch on the age profile here, because in one way you can look at it saying it was great back then when there was no mobile phones and there was more human interactions and there was more conversation, and storytelling was a thing certainly of the past, which we don't necessarily see too much anymore. But at the same time, a certain generation is associated with being closed off and not very in touch with their emotions and not very willing to have the conversations about what they're feeling. So there's a bit of a conflict there, and it sounds that perhaps you're starting to see that is starting to change a little bit, that they've always been great communicators, but perhaps the subject matter of a certain generation hasn't been what it is right now, or what you're experiencing right now through those phone calls.
And that's exactly it. And no matter what way you have a conversation in life, it's two-way. And if it's only coming one way, the conversation ends fairly rapid. And again, it is these people that had conversation and had talk and had communication without what we have today, without the conduits that we have today for our own, whether it's social media. And again, yes, phones and computers and laptops and everything else. But yes, these people are losing their own. But we've got to realise, and you know what? I had a phone call last night. A guy said, "Look, will you give John George a phone call?" I said, "I will." And this guy likes to go for his pints most nights of the week. It's not for the alcohol, or for the alcohol content, but it's for the social aspect of it. And he'd throw a few F's and blinds, and it's all in relation to football. And he started off giving off about Galway men saying, "Oh, Jesus, we missed our chance to put you down to Division 2." But it ended up, the conversation was, he said, and now this fella's in his 50s. Well, he says, "I go to the pub now, and I walk in, and there's three fellas at the counter, and then I'm sitting there, and they're looking at their phones." He said, "You know what, a few weeks ago," I turned around and said, "F this," he says. "I didn't come here to be looking at fellas looking into their phones. I came here for a chat." And he walked out of the pub. I'm going, Jesus. And this is a guy not in his, but he's probably the current way of life. You're going, you know what, he is going to the pub for a chat and a conversation and an argument on football and whatnot. But three other people looking into the phones and him sitting at the counter, he said, he left. And again, I got contacted by a fella that knew him, but it turned out that this is a local guard that went up and visited him the night before and had a sandwich and had a cup of tea out on the door with him. Like, the small things that people are doing, and it's conversational. It's saying, "How are you? How's things? I'm here for you," and you're not on your own. And I think no matter what part of humanity or no matter what part of the lessons we learn, we can't lose these, or we can't forget them, because yes, we've all been, and our generation, guys, we've been through financial crisis of 2008 and 9. But sometimes it doesn't take long to revert. Like New Year's Eve, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to give up that. At the end of 30 days, it's over. 80% of your New Year's resolutions are broken. And when this all ends, and it will be it's not going to end overnight, so it might help us in that way. We need to continue a certain format of life that we've learned from this turbulent time.
I think you're dead right, DB. I think you're showing real leadership, to be honest. And I know it's a really simple thing that you did, but the simplicity of it is a really beautiful thing too, where you're just listening to people. And so much of the stories that we've heard about and the pictures that we've seen have been people giving out about stuff like the chipper queue or the N11 being blocked. And it's like, let's all get angry and angry and angry and angrier and then let it all explode. Or do what you did, which is send out a simple message and reach out to people. And I actually think so many people are doing what you're doing.
And we don't know it. and it's. I put the message out, yes, socially to say, you know what, I'm there if you need it. But the amount of people across, and we know it, we come from 3 different parts of the country, boys. The amount of people that are doing the small things and you're going, again, it's not a country thing. It's not Kerry or Kildare or Mayo. It's a national thing. Dublin and right across the country. It's the Mahel. It's a little bit of, I'm here for you. How's things? How are you keeping? And from that, it means that, you know what, you're not alone, or there is someone there. And look, there's so many great people out there that are doing small things. And it's you know what, we look back in years to come and say, I remember it, but I learned from it. And maybe I became a better person for it.
Well, you are a good man, DB, and I say that without fear of contradiction. I hope your kids take it easy on you. You deserve it. Thanks a million.
Boys, an absolute pleasure. Talk to you and keep safe, and we'll see you when the ball is thrown back in.
I can't wait for it. DB there giving us some thoughts about what we could all be doing a little bit more of, reaching out to people who might need a chat and who might need somebody to listen to them. You can give us your response to that by WhatsApp 087 9180 180, or you can get us on Twitter, where that whole campaign started. And in fairness, he mentioned Alan Brogan weighed in. I think Johnny Doyle has weighed in as well, so hopefully loads more people are going to take that opportunity, and we'll do our bit to help highlight that too as we can. Now, on the Sunday paper review, Tommy Conlon and Declan Bogue joined Joe Malloy. You can watch the whole thing back on Off the Ball's YouTube channel or on the OTB podcast network. Here they are talking about Paul Kimmage's piece with Nicholas Roach.
This is Paul Kimmage interviewing Nicholas Roach, and you'd have to say, in terms of what he manages here to elicit from Nicholas Roach, where effectively he's detailing his love life, his marriage, his divorce, it is not just very good, it's exceptional, Tommy.
Yeah, it is, Joe. Very interesting. And before we get on to the copy, as you say, a quick tip of the hat to David Conaghy for the photography and the front page photo. It could be out of a French movie, you know. And Nicholas, albeit has represented Ireland at the Olympics, as a Frenchman doing a quintessentially French sport, and I think there's something kind of moody, something arty about David Conaghy's, that front page photo in particular, and the tattoo running down Nicholas Roach's back and that, and it's a lovely piece of work visually. I was a bit taken aback when I saw the tattoos, the ink, the verse down Nicholas Roach's back. I thought, well, this is going to be something really profound. But it turns out it's the lyrics from an Ed Sheeran song. And I was thinking, well, come on, Nicholas, you know, if you're going to go to that much trouble, would you not put on a Bob Dylan or a Tom Waits coat or Leonard Cohen? Why does it have to be Ed Sheeran? But I guess maybe that's the generation gap thing, Joe.
No, I would tend to agree. But each to their own. Each their own.
Each their own. And to go back to your main point about what Kimmage does here, and I would venture to say he's maybe the only sports journalist in the world who is capable of doing something like this, because this is about a cyclist on the road, and you think, okay, right, well that's pretty unsurprising. A cyclist lives on the road, makes his life doing the miles on the road, but it's about a cyclist on the road in the other sense of that term, of being on the road in terms of being away from home, more like the rock bands and comedians and entertainers who go from hotel to hotel, do their gig, move on the next day to the next hotel, the next gig. And it's life on the road in that sense that Kimmage has captured here, which makes it fascinating.
Tommy Conlon on the pay-per-view with Joe and Declan Bogue on Sunday. You can watch that whole thing on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball. Now, time for us to move on, because Will O'Callaghan is the latest to put his neck on the block and nominate his county's Mt Rushmore, the top 4 sports people that you would put from your own county. We've done Mayo, we've done Cork. Bit of contention about both of them so far, but poor Will is the first time who's actually had to come out and have his judged essentially by somebody who is, you know, quite well versed on all things history. Paul Rouse is also with us this morning. So, Will, this must be the most intimidating thing you've ever done in your life, right?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ger and Tommy and the rest of the team. When I was picking my shortlist yesterday, I kind of got it down to 16. Then I kind of worried slightly I'd left some people out, so I put it back out to 20. I'm thinking I got to get this back down to 4. And then I get a message from Tommy Rooney, your producer, last night saying, you know what, we're going to put Paul Rouse on the line, who probably knows more about the sporting history of Offaly than anybody, and my former lecturer in college as well. And he's going to probably pick apart your selection. So, yeah, no pressure whatsoever.
Great. Paul, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, Ger. Good morning, Will.
How far back did you go, as a matter of interest, before we get Will's list? Are you going back to like the mid-1500s here?
I operated on the... no, I'm not going back to the mid-1500s. I operated on the view that I had to have seen the person play. That was... I did it in my lifespan, and I'm 50 this summer, so I took it over the last 50 years.
Okay, that's actually a good way of doing it, because there's been a bit of debate about like whether or not... So there was a big dispute in Mayo about whether or not the Mayo man who emigrated to America, who won loads of Olympic golds, was actually better than, say, you know, Kevin Kilbane.
That would be the Mayo man who was the champion athlete at 2 Olympic Games, who held world records for years, who came home to Mayo regularly. Would that be the Mayo man you're talking about?
Yeah. That Nathan didn't know, hadn't heard about, and decided wasn't worthy of consideration. So I'm here for the Mayo bashing, but let's get on to the Will bashing. Will, who have you got for us? How did you whittle the list down? What were your criteria?
So, yeah, I kind of went similarly down the same line as Paul. So I kind of started from the front, where I had a fair idea of my 4, or at least down to 5 major contenders to go on at the start of last week when we started to think about this for the first time. Then yesterday, I kind of broke it out a bit and tried to think outside maybe my own recency bias, because the people I'm selecting are all from the last 30 years. So again, from inside my lifetime. Decided to just put a couple in just to kind of spark a little bit of debate yesterday as well. Someone I hadn't seen, but I wanted to put in just for like an absolute outlier in all this, was the greyhound Mick the Miller, who's known as probably the greatest greyhound in the history of Irish or English greyhound racing. And he had won all the classics, broke 6 world records during his career, first dog ever to win back-to-back English derbies, went on to do the full run of the classics, only dog to ever win all 3, was the first ever dog to go sub 30 seconds, do the 525 yards as well. And there is a bronze statue of him in his hometown of Killy. And not all of the athletes that we're going to mention have their own statues in their town. So I decided to just put that out there to kind of spark debate. A lot of people are like, you cannot put a dog onto Mt Rushmore when you've got so many options. And I think understandably they're probably right.
I like the way you're thinking.
But in terms of, I guess, trying to break it down into the... Yeah, but like trying to break it down into the 4. I mean, very obviously, like Gaelic Games is huge tradition within the county of Offaly. The first county to ever have a player in every position on the All-Stars in both football and hurling. So we could easily have picked a 20 of just hurlers, even from the 1990s and 80s hurling teams, or maybe pick 20 players from the 1970s and 80s Gaelic football teams, and easily have made a shortlist just from that. So I tried to kind of think outside of that. There's a few others that are kind of interesting when you try and take, say, international achievements into account in this as well. Because they're, you know, outside of obviously just a national basis. And you look at Susan Moran, who I know Kieran Shannon has been pushing hard to get onto Mt Rushmore here. And like Sue, just a remarkable athlete, scored over 50 points in 2 All-Ireland basketball finals at the schools level for Tullamore College. Ended up going to St. Joseph's in Philadelphia, went on there to be the 4th top scorer in the NCAA Division 1 in basketball. So he's playing at the very highest level, and was the first ever Irish athlete to be drafted directly into the NBA on graduation. She went to the New York Liberty, played in the women's NBA, and then towards the tail end of her career, went around the globe and played in New Zealand, played in Australia, played in Europe, and captained the Irish international team as well, and is widely considered to be the best ever female Irish basketball player. So there is kind of that risk when you look at Offaly, you look directly at hurling and football, and maybe miss some of these other options that we have along the way. I mean, from a purely international level then as well, you've got Pat Smullen, 9-time champion jockey, fantastic record at Royal Ascot, with Harzand in the Derby in 2016. And then tremendously take what he's done outside of the sport as well. You know, since he was forced into retirement after his 2 bouts of pancreatic cancer, he's raised €2.5 million for cancer trials over the last year as well. So I think that's something you have to take into consideration as well. I tried to weight this largely towards sporting achievement, but I think what makes the sports star an icon is also important to consider when we're picking our final 4 for Mt Rushmore, which I'm saying is going to be the side of Cron Hill in County Offaly.
Why Cron Hill? Explain that to us, for the non-Offaly people.
It's a pretty flat county. I mean, quite aside from maybe the Escarita going through, there's very few actual mountainous areas where we can actually have a Mount Rushmore. And we saw the tremendous picture that James Crombie took last week of the pink moon with someone hurling on the top of Cron Hill. So from that point of view, I think it makes perfect sense. Plus, I think particularly the football teams, Eugene McGee particularly was a big fan of running the players up and down Cron Hill as well. So it seems very fitting that it fits right into Offaly sporting tradition as well.
Okay, before we get to your takedown or interest in exactly what Will's saying here, was there anywhere specific that is actually the heartland, Paul, of where Offaly sport comes from? Is there an automatic site that you think that makes sense?
Well, the point about Cron Hill is well made. It's from that point that we kind of survey and look down on the people of Kildare and Westmeath from a vantage point of our greatness. I think that's so. It could not have been better chosen as a location for these faces. No, the Offaly is united by a green, white and gold jersey in terms of Gaelic football and hurling, but apart from that, it is an entirely divided county. It sprawls across different Catholic dioceses, different Protestant dioceses. It has different administrative divisions. There are people who Offaly's almost like two Leitrim's in terms of there's the football at the north end of the county and there's the hurling at the south end. And I know that has changed, and people will come out and say, well, we have a whole lot of players from the north of the county now who are hurling and players from the south who play football. Yes, that's absolutely true. But the predominant clubs in both codes come from either areas of the county. And I think so there is no one area that you can pick here that says this is the dominant sporting area. But I would suspect that when our lists are compared, that the geographical bias between myself and Will, me being from the Tullamore area and Will being from the south of the county, will be fairly stark and revealing.
Yeah, I think Will might have been toadying up to you, I believe is the official phrase, when he was talking about Susan Moore in there, because you didn't make her list, Will. Who is on your list? You tell us about this amazing athlete and then you're like, no, not good enough for me. So who's on your list, Will?
Right, so you want my final four then? Anyone who wants to read the 20, by the way, before I get accused of leaving anyone out, have a look at offtheball.com where I did the kind of long list yesterday. But okay, my first submission then onto the final four then will be Matt Connor, because Matt Connor is the best ever Gaelic footballer that Offaly have ever produced. Like, quite a remarkable scoring record if you want to break it down into just pure numbers. 38 goals and 383 points scored across his career. In the championship in 1980, in 4 championship games, he scored 5 goals and 31 points, including 2-9 in the defeat to Kerry in the semi-finals. He had only recently turned 20 at the time. He went on to be a star player going right through to that 1982 team. I know everyone remembers Seamus Darby, and I also long-listed Martin Furlong in this as well for the longevity of his career and the importance of that penalty save from Mikey Sheehy in the final as well. But it's what people kind of even would have said of Matt Connor afterwards. Like Mick O'Dwyer said that one of the only good things that came from Kerry losing the 5 in a row was that Matt Connor got an All-Ireland medal. Eugene McGee said that Offaly wouldn't have even been in All-Ireland contention if they didn't have the individual genius of Matt at the time. Like, Matt is a player who would quite easily fit into modern football at the moment. Every time I see David Clifford, it reminds me of videos I would have seen as a child growing up watching Matt Connor in these big games, and he was a big game performer as well. Remarkably two-footed, which made him very difficult to defend against. Players, oftentimes you'll see the videos, particularly of the series of games that Offaly had against Kerry in the early 80s. They didn't know to show him back into his left foot because he would do a dummy, turn back onto his right and bend it over with the outside of his right foot. That's the kind of skill that he had. A tremendously direct runner at goal as well, and always seemed to have a goal on his mind when he got anywhere near goal as well. And in that semi-final in 1980, he scored his goals, absolute rockets with either foot, one with his left, one with his right. Just an incredible footballer to watch on a purely aesthetic level as well. So I think there's no way that you can't have this GAA Hall of Fame member in our final four.
Okay, I think he also gets helped by the fact that they were the coolest jerseys that any GAA team has ever worn. He comes from an era where it just looks amazing. Paul, is he your Gaelic footballer on your list?
No, he's not. He's not my Gaelic footballer on my list. And Matt Connor, I agree with everything that Will has said there, that Matt Connor was the greatest Gaelic footballer that Offaly has produced. He's certainly the greatest that I ever saw. He is an outstanding player. But I went with Martin Furlong on the grounds that Martin Furlong played senior football for Offaly from 1966 until 1985. No Offaly team has ever won an All-Ireland football championship without Martin Furlong being in the goals. When before that, Offaly won its first ever All-Ireland minor championship with Martin Furlong in the goals in 1964, making an unbelievable save against Cork to win them that championship. In 82, everyone talks about Seamus Darby's goal, and rightly so, but Martin Furlong saved the penalty from Mikey Sheehy before that, and had I think what's euphemistically called a coming together with Owen Liston in the first half, which is worth watching on the video, apart from anything else, not least because Owen Liston is a huge man, and Martin Furlong is only 5'9", 5'10", and in 1982, for like Matt, again, it's really hard to argue against Matt Connor, but Martin Furlong was Footballer of the Year, the first goalkeeper and the only one before Stephen Cluxton become Goalkeeper of the Year, which he was awarded not Goalkeeper of the Year, Footballer of the Year in 1982, and I think that has to matter. And in Tullamore Club, he won 3 championships for the footballers, often playing centre forward for that team, so he was able to play outfield as well. He hurled for Tullamore at a very high level. So it's Martin Furlong, and for me.
All right, so local bias absolutely matters when it comes to this.
Yeah, well, it may be my club. So, yes, of course. But like, this isn't a science, right? Obviously, this is something that's based on whim and opinion, as we've seen to some extent within the dimensions of having a plausible argument. Will has a plausible argument. It's obviously I prefer my argument, but Will, I like Matt Connor. I saw Matt Connor score 4-5 against Dunlavin in the Wicklow in the Leinster Senior Football Championship in the second half of the game. I saw him score 4 goals in the second half of a challenge match against Laois in things, and he didn't even look like he was trying. That's the thing about Matt Connor. He looks like he wasn't moving anywhere. He just looked like he wasn't bursting a gut. He just had so much time and space. I mean, an absolute genius.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so Will, who's next? Are we just? Is everybody taking Shane Lowry is automatically on the Offaly Mt Rushmore? I assume that everybody thinks.
I think we have to, Ger. I mean, he is the outstanding candidate, and probably at this stage, after what happened at Royal Portrush last year, would have to be seen as Offaly's greatest ever sports person now as well. Just when you take, as I mentioned, kind of the international aspect to what he's achieved, doing so in a very elite international field, winning a major, which is just, I guess, a step above what anyone else has achieved. Shane Lowry as well, I think when it comes to quite outside of his talent, and over the last 10 years, he's given us so many interesting stories, like becoming the 3rd ever amateur to win on the European Tour, the first amateur to win the Irish Open in 2009 when he won at the ball tray, 15 under par after 2 rounds, had to scrap it out against Robert Rock after missing his putt in the 18th. He used to go down 3 playoff holes, play the 18th 3 more times and eventually wins it. Has to leave a cheque for £500,000 behind, which Robert Rock picked up because Lowry was an amateur. Goes on, retains his card when he was under pressure in Portugal in 2011, then goes on to win the WGC at Bridgestone, wins in Abu Dhabi to start off last year, and then remarkably goes on to cruise to victory in the end at the Open Championship and turn the Claret Jug into the Claret Jug. The fact that he is so loved as well, obviously that huge connection between his uncle and his dad being 2 of the great Offaly footballers who would have been in contention to get into this top 20 as well, particularly I suppose Shawnee Lowry, who had just a remarkable career, and then Shane has taken on that sporting prowess, and he's always at games as well. Like, you'll see him at Clara games in both hurling and football. You'll often see him at Offaly games as well. A huge kind of die-hard supporter, a guy who's very popular with people as well. I don't think there's anyone really who would, and I'll see if Paul can decide not to have Shane on the list, who wouldn't want Shane on this Mt Rushmore.
Well, notwithstanding the tensions between Tullamore and Clara, which manifest themselves all over the place, there is no arguing against Shane Lowry in my view. And the very fact of winning the Offaly, the very fact of winning the Irish Open as an amateur, just the absolute guts and bravery, courage, skill that he displayed on that day has been manifest throughout his career. He is like an outstanding international competitor. He's recognised all over the place, and rightly so. And I think there can be there's no arguing against him. I should say, by the way, it was his father and his 2 uncles were on the Offaly team in '82, and Sean Lowry, who won the All-Ireland for Offaly 71, 72 and 82, then went on and won a Connacht Senior Football Championship with Mayo in '85, and probably must have been close enough to Nathan's list when it comes down to it.
Owen, you were very quiet there about the whole Kerry 5 in a row. Did you just the line dropped or something? Is that what happened?
Well, it's when you're listening to 2 unbelievably knowledgeable people talking about Offaly and knowledgeable people talking about 82, you've got to let them at it. Like, those lads, how close does Seamus Darby come to either of your lists? Just because, in my view, he is the most famous Offaly footballer to ever exist. Martin Furlong and Matt Canner, of course, will be up there in terms of the greats of Offaly football. But in terms of the legacy of one footballer to be more famous than the others, it has to be Seamus Darby, does it not?
I suppose it depends how you define things. I was trying to do it over kind of the length of their career and trying to take maybe sporting achievements into it. Like, remarkable that Seamus Darby had come back in, got onto the panel in 82 and had that huge impact off the bench. As you say, from an iconic moment point of view, Seamus Darby would definitely be deserving of being on any Mt Rushmore. But it's difficult, like, when you're trying to break that down against some of the other guys we were looking at, like Furlong, looking at, say, someone like Paddy McCormack, who was there throughout the late 50s, 60s, 70s on the 2 All-Ireland winning teams, would have played every position for Offaly as well. The likes of Willie Bryan and so on from that team. It's difficult to actually pick someone out, but I think, Paul, if you were going to put Seamus Darby on it, it would be just for, I guess, the enormity of the moment that he achieved.
It's the enormity of the moment, and it's the success. But Seamus Darby was a brilliant footballer who, for both Road and for Offaly, had more than a decade's service with All Ireland in the early 70s. So he had a long career which had drifted away towards the end, and he came back in 82. And was obviously, there's no All Ireland without Seamus Darby in 1982, and just a great footballer and a great servant to Offaly football. But even Seamus would not put himself in the same league as I think as the others.
Lads, what are we thinking hurling wise? Because this is where things get very interesting, I would have thought.
Well, if Paul's going to get a Tullamore man onto the list and Martin Furlong, I'm definitely getting a Burr man onto the list and Brian Whelan on this one. This is a difficult one because, like, the Offaly team in the 1990s particularly, I think, were pretty beloved, and there was lots of people who were probably in contention here. Like, Martin Hanamy is one of the best cornerbacks of all time. John Troy, just from a purely skill point of view, was just absolutely remarkable. Johnny Dooley was the other player that I put in my shortlist. In that, he was a 4-time All-Star across various different positions, scored the very important penalty to spark the 2-5 against Limerick in the last 5 minutes of the final in 1994. But I don't think anyone could argue that Brian Whelan was probably a cut above all the players in that period. Like, he won 8 All-Ireland medals between Burr and Offaly, between All-Ireland seniors, minors and All-Ireland club championships as well. He hurled into his early 40s. He had an over 22-year career across club and county. One of the most elegant defenders you will ever see, with just remarkable reading of the game as well. Like, one of the things about Whelan, it wasn't just that he was a tight marker, he was almost a playmaker out of the half-back line as well. And he was the only player to get selected on the team of the millennium who was an active player when that was picked in 2000. And I'd imagine he probably got in that team nearly purely on the basis of how he hurled a few months previously in the 1999 semi-final against Cork, which was probably Brian Whelan's best ever performance. When he's sick in 1998, he gets pushed up into the full forward line because he wasn't able for the running in the half-back line. He scores 1-6 from play in that final when Offaly beat Kilkenny, which just goes to show what he can do. And we went out to shoot an off-the-ball piece with Burr at the tail end of the summer last year, and we had 2 of the All-Ireland winning captains in Joe Erity and Johnny Pilkington. Brian Whelan, as would be his way, was the last man in, and he pulled a hurl that looked like it was from the 1700s out of the back of his van. There was only half a boss on the hurl because it was broken down the middle, and we were shooting some hurling sections, and Brian Whelan did not misplace any ball that went near him. He controlled every single one with half a hurl, which just goes to show at 49 years of age that he still has it as well. Brian Whelan's remarkable. First ever hurler to win the Hurler of the Year twice. He was an All-Star on 4 different occasions, and famously not an All-Star in the first year where he won Hurler of the Year, which resulted in him breaking his fist in the hotel at City West as well, because he was so annoyed that he didn't get an All-Star. So maybe that gives a mark of the kind of athlete we're talking about here and competitor. He was really annoyed. It was the time they had to actually change the All-Star system around Ger. He wasn't picked for an All-Star, and then after the way he hurled in the final in 94, he was picked as Hurler of the Year. He was so annoyed he went out to the toilet and he hit the door of the loo and broke his hand.
Wow. I mean, I knew that he hadn't been selected and had been Hurler of the Year, and it was a stain and continues to be a stain on the All-Star selectors to this day. But I didn't realise that, right, fair enough. So obviously these individual awards do matter, and he'll be delighted, obviously, this morning to be waking up to the news that Will O'Callaghan has put him on his Mt Rushmore. Is there a hurler, Paul, on your list?
There is a hurler on my list, and again, I suppose I reveal my age here as being significantly older than Will, and so I would like to give a nod as well to that team of the 80s, Offaly team of the 80s, who broke the mould by winning All Irelands in 81 and 85. And you must remember that Offaly was the first new county to win an All Ireland for a very long time at that stage, so it was a huge dam burst. And those players, there were outstanding players on the team, players such as Eugene Coughlin, Paddy Delaney, Johnny Flaherty, Mark Corrigan. The two Corrigans are unbelievable. Actually, Mark Corrigan, the day that Ireland played Egypt in the 1990 World Cup, Offaly played Kilkenny in the Leinster Hurling Championship at the same time in Croke Park. It was the smallest crowd ever, I'd say, at a Leinster Hurling semi-final. There was nobody there. Offaly hammered Kilkenny. Mark Corrigan scored 3-7 or 3-8 playing corner forward, and he was just an unbelievable player. And as it turned out, the following weekend, Tullamore played Trinity in a league match in O'Connor Park, and there must have been an outbreak of bubonic plague in Tullamore, but I ended up corner back marking Mark Corrigan, and it managed to hold him to 1-2. Which I think might have been more if Corrigan hadn't gone off injured after 10 minutes. It's one of those. It was one of those. I mean, the man was a genius. But look, you look at that team in the 90s, and they were more skillful than the 80s team. The 80s team were great hurlers as well, but there was a more dogged, committed nature to the game. And the game was different at that stage anyway. But by the 90s. Johnny Dooley is an outstanding player. I loved John Troy. Absolutely loved John Troy for someone of skill and talent. Obviously, I have to give a shout to Kevin Martin, my own clubman. But I'll agree with Brian Whelan. Brian Whelan was just an adornment in any game he played, forwards, backs. There was nothing he didn't do on the field. Just an outstanding player.
Yeah, he'd a Michael Jordan-esque flu game. It's kind of, he is at that level of absolute superstars in the game. Can I just go back to the football? Is there a case that actually, in the point you made about the team in the 80s being the team that breaks the mould for the hurlers, is there any way that you can see Eugene McGee being on Offaly's Mt Rushmore, given that he is the architect of the team that comes along in the 80s, or because they'd already won before that? Who was the manager in the 70s?
Well, it's funny, if the team of 69 that got to the All-Ireland final was managed by Father Tom Scully, who died last week. An incredible man, complications from Covid-19, died just a month short of his 90th birthday. It is an extraordinary story, but so there was him, and then in the 71-72 team, it's another priest, Father Gilhooly, trained as well by Allo Kelly, Tullamore man, who again was fated for what they did at the time. And yes, you can make a case for Eugene McGee, a Longford man, or for his, I suppose, most celebrated in that area, Longford Cavan area. And Eugene McGee is an adopted son of Offaly, but I think the tendency is to cleave towards players and people who've actually done it on the field. And I wouldn't argue for Eugene McGee ahead of either of the other two.
Okay, we'll have an interesting conversation about Hefo whenever it comes to the Dubs. I'm kind of looking forward to, and also not looking forward to.
But he did it on the field as well. Kevin Heffernan did it on the field as well. So he had his career in the 50s as a kind of a mold-breaking footballer at that stage as well. So Hefo had it both ways.
Okay, so we'll get to make that case twice. All right, so we've agreement on Wheelahan. We've no agreement on Matt Connor. It's Furlong. We've agreement on Larry. So half and half agreement so far. Will, who is your final person on Mt Rushmore in Offaly?
Yeah, I'm going to put Pat Smullen on here, Ger. Just, I guess, first of all, his achievements in terms of being a 9-time Irish flat champion jockey, the great kind of battles he had for the championship with the likes of Joseph O'Brien and Fran Berry over the last decade and a half as well. Pretty tremendous record, really, at Royal Ascot, including that great success in 2016, which he had with Harzand in the Derby at Epsom as well. You look at other major victories like Rite of Passage back in 2010 and the Ascot Gold Cup. He also had Fascinating Rock in the Champion Stakes back in 2015 as well. Won all of the classics here in Ireland as well, the Derby, the Oaks, the St. Ledger, the 1000 Guineas, won the Tattersalls Gold Cup on multiple occasions across the CV as well. So as flat jockeys in Ireland go, like Pat Smullen has a longevity both about his career and also just a glittering run of success across the CV. You know, he won victories at the Breeders' Cup, he's won at Longchamp before, so he's done it outside of Ireland and Britain as well. I think one of the other reasons that pushes Pat Smullen really into this as well is that, you know, Pat is beloved in Road for a start, and that's really a football area, but yet everyone in Road who's interested in football has also followed Pat Smullen's career throughout all this as well. And you take into account that, you know, Pat was forced very sadly into retirement. We were hoping after his first bout with pancreatic cancer that he might get back into the saddle, but unfortunately in March of last year he made the decision to retire. Very quickly we saw into Champions Weekend at the start of last autumn, they decided to have a fundraiser for Pat Smullen, and he was doing a lot of the pushing and the fundraising himself around cancer trials trials. So far, they've raised nearly €3 million. €2.5 million was raised over the couple of weekends on Champions Weekend as well. So Pat Mullen, a very sound fella on top of a remarkable CV as a rider as well. And I think when you take all his achievements into account, he deserves a place on this Mount Rushmore.
It's a pretty compelling case, all right, Paul?
Oh, this is really tough. My mother's from Rouse, so this is not going to go well. Even though I could go home at the moment, I don't think I'd even get in the gate, let alone the door. But Pat Mullen, you cannot argue against that list of achievements. He's an extraordinary man, on and off the track. What he has done, those arguments are that Will makes are utterly compelling. But I've come at it from a different angle. In the mid-1990s, I used to work as a reporter for the Leinster Express in the Midlands, the Leinster Express and Offaly Express. And in the course of that, I began to report on basketball. And there was a girls' team in Tullamore CBS who went on to win 2 All-Irelands, which brilliant players on the team. People like, I can't remember all their names at this room, but there was Emily Bryan, Susan Flynn, Ciara Quinlan, and Susan Moran. Now, Susan Moran, at this time, was regularly scoring, coached brilliantly, by the way, by Anne Ganley and other teachers, was scoring 50 points a game in key matches. And at the same time, she was also an international tennis player for Ireland. She goes on, and basketball is the second most popular sport in the world. And this has to matter. So she goes on then, and she goes to America and has a choice of colleges where she could go to. She can go to Boston, you can go to New York, wherever, and she goes to Philly, to St. Joseph's, a Division 1 team. She could have gone to a Division 2 team. She went to a Division 1 team. She goes in there and is so successful that her jersey is retired afterwards, the second jersey ever in the history of that college for that to happen. She is then recruited straight out of college into the women's NBA, plays there, plays brilliantly, goes then and plays professionally in various other leagues, traveling around the place, comes back and is so well regarded that she's taken back as a coach and becomes lead coach back in Joseph. It is an extraordinary career, and the context of this career is and has to be seen to be the very fact that she did this at a time in the mid-1990s when women's sport is not as well regarded as it was now. The opportunities for women to play sport were much lower. The infrastructure in Tullamore, like you'd see Susan Moran in the school grounds in the Sacred Heart practicing repeatedly all of these times. This is a time when there was, in my own town in Tullamore, there was camogie, which was strong, but there was no women's Gaelic football. There was very limited opportunities for girls to play sport relative to what there are now. And she did this. She went from a small town in the Midlands of Ireland to become a leading basketball player in America. And that has to matter.
I think it does, Will.
Yeah, no, look, again, it's one of the things, as Paul mentions, he was running for the Offaly Express at the time. I think I first started working for Midlands Radio in about 2001, 2002. I think one of the first jobs I used to have was ringing Sue on a Saturday afternoon after she'd usually played in the women's NBA on a Thursday night or a Friday, and ringing her just for a conversation about how things were going with New York Liberty. So it was one of those things. She was just an absolute superstar and remains very connected to Ireland as well. She drafted Claire Melia, who was playing with the Portlaoise Panthers, who she knew through her connections back here at home, and has drafted Claire Mealy onto the St. Joseph's first team as well. And Claire is doing remarkably well from Monaster Evan. So she's got a great eye for players as well. Not just I think she's an associate head coach still with Joe's at this stage in Philadelphia, but is also involved in a lot of their international recruitment. So she remains highly regarded. As Paul mentioned, her jersey has been retired. Remarkable the numbers that she ran up. I think she was the top rebounder and point scorer for Joe's across the 4 years of her undergraduate degree and then her graduate degree as well before she went into the women's NBA. And then on top of that, she was the 4th top scorer across America in all divisions. So she was playing in Division 1, but she was still outscoring players in the lower divisions of basketball, in college basketball as well. So I would have absolutely no problem with putting Sue on here. I guess we could propose some kind of compromise maybe on the 4. We put Sue on instead of Pat, and maybe we get Matt Connor on instead of Martin Furlong, and we call it everyone's had a very good day, and we go home with the cuddly toy.
I actually would propose a different solution, given the scale of the achievements of the people of the county that we get a fifth head in all of this. It seems to me that the county's achievements, the genius of its people deserves recognition, and I think in this a special exemption should be made for a smaller county as well that should achieve so much.
Perfect. Yeah, I can see the pitchforks literally with the sods of turf inflamed as we put 4 up, and they're like, no, put the fifth one up.
Not our fault, sir. They could have got Jimmy Barry Murphy onto Cork if Colin Boog had made the exact same argument last week.
Yeah, but that whole point is there's only 4. So it was JBM or Ring. I think everybody's putting JBM up against Raj, but that wasn't how it was at all. The history of sports series so far with Joe every Tuesday nights, or is it Wednesday nights?
Oh yeah, it's Tuesday nights normally. Sometimes it's Monday nights. And so we come back and we've 3 done. We go back. We come back next week on Monday or Tuesday of next week to talk about the origins of soccer and of rugby in England and how they began to leak into Ireland over the following weeks. It's actually Will took this course in UCD and was an outstanding student on the course, I have to say. So it's been really enjoyable. It's been really enjoyable to do this, and it's because it's, I suppose, the last time I'll teach the course. It's one of those really enjoyable things to do.
Right. How is your lockdown? What pop culture are you binging on?
I have made. I'm again a bit of a Luddite when it comes to these things, but I've made kind of the first tentative steps into Fortnite, which has seen shock and awe displayed around the place now. I've watched a little bit. Well, got to watch more telly than would ordinarily watch. I'm in a WhatsApp group where there is a DJ, a self-appointed DJ, who is proposing a weekly or nightly song list, an album in old-fashioned terms, which has been very enjoyable as well. And then just reading and actually trying to get fit, a little bit fit, which is challenging. It's harder than I think it is, and there's also obviously Easter and all the chocolate that comes with that. The weekend was a lot of weightlifting. Yeah, exactly.
Paul, great stuff. Thanks a million. And I like the way you were buttering up, Will. But I think Will is sticking. Are you sticking with Pat Mullen or are you changing? Is Susan getting on?
Well, are we allowed at 4 or 5, Ger?
You're 4. You're allowed 4.
Ger, come on.
No changes. This is like a team of Nathan Murphys ganging up on us. You're allowed 4, Will. Who are they?
All right, okay. Let's put Sue Moore on then. And so what we'll do is we'll have 2 picks each then. So we'll have Martin Furlong, Brian Wheelahan, Sue Moore, and we got Shane Lowry. That's our 4.
Well, so that's a perfect end to this. Lads, thanks a million, and congratulations on sticking your Offaly's Mt Rushmore together. There is the iconic shot of Crahan Hill. Am I saying that right? Is it Cragan Hill?
No, Crahan Hill.
Crahan Hill. And that was taken by James Crombie out by Info last week. Absolutely sensational stuff. That is it from us this morning on OTB AM. Thanks very much for joining us at 12 o'clock today. You can listen to Richie McCormick's Isolation Mix on OTB Sports Radio, offtheball.com/radio, and on the Go Loud app. Off the Couch this afternoon is swimming, I think. I'm pretty sure. I'll tell you the full details of that a little bit later on. At 7 o'clock tonight, Off the Ball returns with Joe. We're back at 7:30 tomorrow. Until 10, Stephanie Preissner joins us on the OTB Culture Hall of Fame to chat about the US office. And that is our lot. We'll see you tomorrow. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed from 7:30. Go easy.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The OTB Brief.